Hey, boo.
Hi, Christine.
2 days in a row. Aren't you lucky?
I am. I woke up in a really good mood because I was going to talk to you.
Yeah, you texted us like 20 minutes before recording, and I was like, why are you awake? You're usually
Oh,
asleep.
That was me waking up for sure. I was.
No, I know,
bed.
but you're usually asleep till about 5 minutes before recording. So I was
And
impressed.
this time it was 20.
It was. I was genuinely like, why is Em awake? Because when Eva said, who wants to start the Zoom? I was like, I'll do it. Em's probably asleep. And then you responded, and I thought, so someone's chipper and up bright and early?
I don't know. I don't know why I'm chipper. That's an outlier. But I do think.
Let's not question it too much.
Yeah. But I've been having this thing where the last few days now I've been having really vivid dreams and then doing that thing where I wake up because I think I missed something and I panic.
Oh, no.
And then I realize I have exactly 40 minutes left before I have to wake up. So that happened again today. And I just happened to have
That's
my panic thing before I almost actually slept through this. So I was like, I should just stay awake. Anyway, that's why I appeared stoked to be awake.
I mean, listen, I'm going to pretend like it's the real deal and you're just thrilled to see me.
I am. I'm not kidding. I woke up and I was like, I am definitely chipper because I was like, I'm going to talk to Christine today.
Aww.
And I was very excited about it.
Why do you drink this week, Em?
Boy, why do I drink this week? I'm stressed. I'm very stressed about just a lot of obviously the holiday stuff coming up of just like having to travel to multiple places. And this year we're adding Allison's family to the mix, which is the first time I'm going home to Allison's family for the holidays. They do a thing which I so appreciate called Fake Miss, where it's so the whole family can get together before they have to go to the in-laws. And so it does not actually get in the way of my Christmas plans, which I love because
What is Fake Miss? What do you like? What
fake Christmas.
Like, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean? So
they have Christmas before Christmas, so that way all the
on a different day.
Yeah.
Oh, got you. Okay.
And works out very well for me because I struggle a lot with like routine changes, especially in things like holidays, where like I at least have a fixed idea of what's going on, especially from a chaotic family. I really like to know exactly what the fuck's going on. So
it's so funny because I've developed the opposite way, where I'm just like, fucking throw me to the wolves, baby. This is how I thrive.
I think I've made such a lovely life for myself out here that then all of a sudden when I go back to like my childhood, my mom's house is fine. Seeing my friends is fine. Like I see my dad, which is fine. It's all of a sudden I feel like I'm at the mercy of other people's schedules or like I have to use their car. It becomes a whole thing. And so you'd think I would want to run away in the opposite direction and go be with Allison's family, but there is something weirdly alluring about going back home.
Yeah, I get that. And to be fair, I have a house here, so I get to hide away.
True.
Like that's different.
But you have a baby, so everyone follows you home.
That's true.
That's actually true. So much scarier. That's like your baby is the invitation to vampires sometimes,
but
you know?
But to be fair, they come over to be with her and I get to go sleep. And so
that is lovely.
It is kind of a great, like sometimes we'll all hang out and the baby will just be in the middle of the room and I'll go like, what did we talk about before this baby? Like, what did we do? Because now it's like, oh, we just look at the baby or like talk about the baby. Like, what else did we even do before now?
Allison's brother, this is, I think, going to be their first Christmas
with
their baby. And the baby is like, as an only child, I always grew up thinking when I have a kid, at least it has no competition about being the cutest baby in the next generation. On Allison's side, my baby's going to be so gross looking compared to this baby. It's
a cute baby.
It's the cutest little Gerber baby I've ever seen in my entire life. So I'm
so cute.
I'm at a disadvantage immediately on her side. On my side, going to be the cutest baby, also the ugliest. So, you know,
honestly,
whatever.
Good for you. I like that you set the parameters now of like, there's only one baby, so it'll be cute and ugly.
I like to prep.
Time.
I like to know what's coming. So
you just have your. I appreciate that about you. I do.
Why, other than my holiday stress, I'm just stressed about like, I feel like I don't have enough time before the holidays to get everything done, but I feel like that happens every year. Why do you drink?
You know, I don't know. I'm not even particularly stressed about the holidays.
Because you don't have to go. You don't have to leave home.
Don't know. I did leave for Thanksgiving, so we got that out of the way. I am going actually to Florida for New Year's, though.
Why?
Because my dad has a house down there and it survived the hurricane. So he's like, come on
Mm.
down. And I'm like, okay. And my brother's
Well,
going. So I was like,
that's-
I want to go.
I've never heard you celebrating New Year's before.
I don't really ever do, I don't know. I don't think we ever really did much. I used to go to Chicago every year to like Blaze's friend's house and like we would go out, but we're too old for that now.
Oh, meanwhile, I like my friends literally
I'm
today
talking
texted
like
me.
clubbing. Like I was like,
Oh.
and we would like walk around with like out any clothes on basically in like negative 18 degrees in Chicago. Now I'm like, let's be inside. Let's be indoors. I don't really want to go outside for that. So I'm going to Florida where it's nice and warm.
My friends literally today texted me a list of all the bars we're gonna go to
Yeah.
on New Year's.
I mean, we'll probably do, well, I don't know. We'll see. I like to go out for New Year's, but I feel like in LA, I would always go to the bar down the street. And the last time my cousin came and we went out and I don't know, but nothing too wild. Clubbing's not my jam.
Where
Not
in
that it ever
Florida?
was.
Unless you don't want to triangulate.
No,
yourself.
yeah. Fort Myers area. I don't,
They have a minor league team,
do they? What is it called?
the Mighty Muscles.
That's really good.
Yeah, and the muscles are like the animal, but also like your muscles.
Oh, the muscle. Oh my God. That's amazing. I didn't even get the double entendre there.
Oh, I love when you say double.
I know. That's why I said it. But yeah, so he has just like a small little condo there and
Nice.
we've never been. So I was like, well, all right. I'll bring you your mail. It'll require an extra carry-on suitcase. But
Are you abandoning your sweet little baby, or are you
no,
bringing her with you?
We're all coming. And Blaze's birthday is January 2nd. So I think we're going to stay down there for that and, do a little birthday celebration down there.
I did know Blaze's birthday was the 2nd, and my first thought for some reason, which is not in your character, but my first thought was, oh, you're going to go to Florida and leave your husband on his birthday to watch the baby.
Honestly, he'd be like, okay, I guess, whatever. Like, I feel like at this rate, the amount of times I say, by the way, tomorrow I have to go to California or Canada or somewhere else, he'd be like, okay. Like, nothing surprises him
What a
anymore.
good man. What a good man.
He is very patient, and I'm a very patient Capricorn, so I do appreciate that. And he is also very patient, speaking of holidays, when we are thrown into everybody's different house. And now that my other set of parents are divorced, now we have like 3 or 4 houses
Yeah,
like you get it. It's just a lot.
I totally get it. That is a lot.
But like you said, the vampires can come here, but they can't come they can come in my room, but I'm still going to be sleeping in there. So
you're spooky enough that you're into it. It's okay.
yeah, they can, whatever, have a good time. Just be quiet.
I got a question for you. What are you drinking today?
Oh, I'm drinking an iced coffee from Sitwell's, which is the coffee shop that I used to go to when I was younger near my mom's house. And while I'm triangulating, and I was like, oh my gosh, they deliver on DoorDash. So I got a little sandwich, I got a little iced coffee. Eva has me putting half and half in my iced coffee. She didn't do this on purpose. This is just something that she does, and now I copy her. So
trendsetter.
yeah, so I'm gonna be kind of a buzzing because this is like my 3rd coffee of the day.
Oh, for a second, I was like, girl, it's like 10 in the morning. Relax. Oh, but it's not for you.
Not quite. It's almost 2, so I gotta get this down before my caffeine cut off at 4.
I gotta tell you, I have a new drink at Starbucks, which I still love my London Fogs. Please don't get me wrong. And I do often, as in today, have a Arnold Palmer. Although I'm trying to find other things that won't give me heartburn anymore.
The
and
sugary.
wow, the Arnold Palmer surely does. So I still drink my London Fogs, but they don't have it on delivery. So on they never have it on Uber Eats or anything. And so I've been like, oh man, well, I just never get Starbucks delivered because I don't know what to get unless I want heartburn. And then I get my Arnold Palmer. And I'm sure this is like something everyone else knows and I'm so behind, but I do want to advocate real quick for the vanilla cream, the hot vanilla cream. Have you heard of this?
Excuse me?
It sounds gross. But
Yes, it does.
Anytime someone throws the word cream in, I'm like, But
especially hot cream. I think it's
cream.
the hot that does it to me. I'm like, I don't know about that.
Well, because sometimes if I didn't say hot, then I think a lot of people mistake it for the vanilla cream frappuccino, which is obviously cold. But they have a hot drink called the vanilla cream, and it's their take on a hot chocolate, but it's basically a hot vanilla. And it's very good. I really don't think it's anything beyond like milk and vanilla syrup. But I'm telling you, I drank it and I was like, this is like the nicest, like, it was like, it really did taste like a hot chocolate, but vanilla flavored. It was
sounds
very
tasty.
weird. It was, if I would say, I think it's also often meant as like a caffeine-free option for kids
For
because
children. Yeah.
it had like kid size, like before tall and before grande. So I was like,
Really?
oh, okay, so a lot of moms
So you were
probably
like, Trenta, please?
I did want a Trenta. But yeah, apparently a lot of moms are probably already on the vanilla cream train, but if you didn't know about it, or if you always like scrolled past it on your menu and you're like, what is this?
I've never even heard of it.
Worth it.
Well, I'm
so
always into
worth
coffee, but you don't drink coffee, so you're like the anti-coffee club.
I have such a limited variety of things I can get at Starbucks that aren't coffee based. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
oh wow, if you're like kind of sick of London fogs, you maybe alternate between that and a vanilla cream.
It's
and
a
I'm telling
double-
you, it's so good.
It sounds delicious. It sounds like I'll never order it except maybe for my child, but it sounds good. I mean,
Yeah. Leona and I
would-
are gonna have a good time.
maybe if I put a couple shots of espresso in there, I'd take
Okay.
a stab at it. I'm serious. That does sound good though. Now that I say it out loud.
I think next time we're together, I get one and you take a little sippy and
Oh,
you
I
tell
would
me
love
what you
to.
think.
Yep,
Okay.
I'm sure it sounds it sounds delicious when you describe it. It's just the wording, hot
I know.
cream. It sounds like it should be curdled. You know, I'm like
That
this
is true. Hot cream. Also, there's the gross euphemisms to that as well. So
Oh yeah, there's that too. There's a layered. It's a layered. It's a double. It's a triple entendre or something.
It's an onion of a drink.
Yeah, that's what we always wanted, an onion of a drink.
But
real
if you like
quick-
hot chocolate, it's vanilla version. So that's all you need to
the
know.
other day, real quick, I was on the airplane and we were heading home from Connecticut, and we flew from Boston to Cincinnati, and the guy next to us ordered. It was like me, Blaze, and the baby, and so the guy next to us ordered. He's like, "Do you have hot chocolate?" And he was probably like 40 or something, and they were like, "No, we don't have hot chocolate." And he's like, and then he said, "Okay, can I have an apple juice?" And they were like, "Sure." And
Were you just like looking into my future?
I what 100% because we ended up talking to him, and he has a baby like a couple months younger than Leona, and I was like, dude, because then he was across the aisle. They came to us, and we were both like, beer, gin and tonic, please. And we were like holding an infant, and I was like, dude, you're off the clock. Like your baby's not even here. You should be, partying
Jamming
it up.
out. I know, but that'll be me without my
That
baby
is
one
you
day.
partying it up. Yeah, he was like, I'll have an apple juice. And I was like, okay, how sweet is that? Like,
Oh, I'm glad someone maybe thinks I'm endearing instead of
it
sad.
was endearing. And then Blaze and I were like, beer, please, beer.
You know, the world can seem so shameful to people who don't drink alcohol. I understand. I don't understand the plight of people who are going through sobriety, but I do know what they're talking about when they say like, there's just so few options out there
Yeah, I
after
feel like
I stopped
it
drinking.
must be really hard. And I feel like even for you or my dad or like a lot of people I know who don't drink, it's, they're not recovering. They just never drank. Like they just never were into it.
You just get real comfortable with like a pineapple juice. And you call
Yeah,
it a day.
exactly. And I wonder, like, you probably get I don't know if you get asked, but like I've seen my dad get asked, like, oh, do you not drink anymore? Like,
I have been asked,
people
yeah.
have
They're
asked,
like,
like, oh, are they recovering? And I'm like, nah.
I also feel really bad because someone will see that and I think assume that I'm also going through
Yes,
recovery because
exactly.
then they'll come up to me and go like, oh my God, I've been clean for this long or I've been sober for this long.
They
And
either
I'm
think
like,
you're sober, like you're recovering, or they think that you are a huge pothead, which cracks me up. I feel like those are the two
Yeah.
things people are like, wow, you must just be smoking all the time. And I'm like, no, I cover both those bases and M just kind of drinks pineapple juice.
I feel like I appreciate that people think I've got to like get my fun from somewhere because it's just, I'm unnaturally fun.
Yeah, what's your vice?
chocolate
I've got
milk,
a lot,
man?
So
Chocolate milk and like, I don't know, 3 a.m. impulse purchases. That's kind of it. That's my vibe.
listen, I mean, I get it. It's still a fun life, I'm sure.
It's a good time. I mean, I usually I would say milkshakes, but I'm not kidding everybody. Like the older I get, this lactose intolerance thing is really keeping me from enjoying my own team milkshake. Every time I take one sip, all of a sudden I'm like clearing my throat for the next 5 days. So
I was listening to old episodes when we stayed at the Driscoll Hotel, which we hadn't really talked about yet. And I listened to episode, was it 18 or it was like
30 something,
32 maybe. And it was, back in my old apartment. It was one of our first, like one of our early episodes, obviously. And it was so funny because the whole time you were like,
Oh,
your poor
God.
throat. I was like, oh God, Em has not figured out what is causing this horrible sound to come out of their body.
All of my health ailments are really just the foreshadowing on every episode.
It's
There's
fascinating to listen to those old. And we were
I
like,
wonder
hey,
what's going to happen in this episode that one day we'll be foreshadowing for something else.
It's like a time capsule for all our future problems. Probably you'll become an alcoholic or something, and we'll be like, well, wasn't that nice back in the day when Em
be like,
didn't
oh,
drink?"
remember when I was really advocating for pineapple juice and chocolate milk?
Yeah, those were the days.
Yeah. Well, I will say being fully straight edge has actually probably hurt me more in the heartburn world, because if I'm not drinking juice, that's like half of my intake, and my heart hurts.
Yeah,
all
but
the
like
time.
people, that's what wine is, you know. Wine
Oh,
does
okay,
not
you're
feel
right, you're
good on heartburn either. So,
Okay.
I would say you're probably only helping yourself. And I believe everyone who drinks, and probably everyone who doesn't drink, would agree with me that you're doing yourself a lot of favors being straight edge. I promise. So
The irony will be when I go to a doctor one day and they're like, "Your liver is fucked up,"
your
and I'll be
liver.
like, "What?"
your pineapple juice has really corroded your body away.
It will be the propranolol that probably takes me out for
Well, then
once
it'll
and
take
for
me
all.
out right with you, okay? So we're both going down together. It's fine. Anyway, sorry. I know that was way long rant, but yeah, I told
No.
you I had so much coffee.
I know. Well, also, no, that does make me feel good that someone maybe saw me getting like a Capri Sun one time and thought it was cute instead of like.
No, I found it endearing, and I said I wish I could be that person, but I need booze right now. I know that sounds really bad, and people are like, "You're with your child. Don't worry. We had one beer, and
Honestly,
we were Ubering."
anytime someone gets a drink and they have their child with them, I'm like, get two. Like,
Yeah,
I don't understand, but I understand enough.
I
like,
gotta say, I was on
help
the plane
yourself.
once, like exactly, like you get it to a certain extent. You know enough people who are in that position where you're like, I get it. I was on the plane once, and there was a woman next to me, and she sat down and she said, "I just want to apologize up front. My son has autism and like can be really, have a hard time on planes." And I was like, okay, well, you're sitting next to the right person, like. Let's go.
Yeah, we're
It
good,
doesn't
yeah.
phase me. And she's like, if he kind of gets in your space, I apologize. And I said, oh, whatever, let's fucking go. He's watching Mickey Mouse Club. I'm all over it. Let's party.
Did you share a bottle of wine together or anything?
So, because we were like way in the back, and it took forever for them to get to us, and they finally got to the back, and she, the flight attendant says, "Can I get you anything?" She goes, "2 margaritas, please," for herself. But like, since we were, in just the plebe section of the plane, they were like, "Well, that'll be like $16," and I was like, "Please step aside." I had these free drink vouchers that I never get to use on my Delta app, and I was like, "I'm using my free drink vouchers on you." And the whole time she's like, "Thank you so much." I'm like, I literally had a coupon. Like I didn't actually pay for your beverages, but I
She
felt like
probably still thinks about you.
it was really sweet. I was like, I felt like I was doing the smallest thing possible that I could do, but they were lovely, and I got to watch some Mickey Mouse, so it was a good flight. And then I was like, fuck it, I'll get a margarita too, man. Let's party.
Yeah, sounds good.
Anyway, sorry,
well,
go on.
No. All I was gonna do was probably keep the circular conversation going.
I
where I
love
just
it.
list drinks that I like. Anyway, if you happen to be also just sidebar, on top of not drinking alcohol, I also don't like coffee, so that takes away a whole other category.
That I feel like coffee and wine are two like huge parts of most people's lives.
Yeah.
Or at least mine.
Well, then also a lot of people, I've gotten like shade before where people are like, "Why do you wake up so late?" Because 10 o'clock for me is early. Usually, honestly, if I wake up, I always try to wake up before 11. I feel really gross about myself if I sleep past 11. But people are like, "Why don't you wake up earlier?" And then I've said one time in passing in front of one of them, like, I don't drink coffee. And they went, "Oh, that's why earlier you said you don't wake up early." And I was like, I guess that could be a reason, but also I just love sleep more than anything else on earth.
Sometimes I go to bed feeling ecstatic about the coffee I will have the next morning. I get excited about my cup of coffee that's coming in the morning. So maybe that would be an incentive. But also like I also don't like to get up early, and coffee helps, but it doesn't like fix the problem. So I would say
think
you're
maybe
still...
it fixes that person's problem, and they were like, "Oh, that makes sense." And I was like, "Okay, guy, like first
also
of all,
not good for heartburn. So like again, you're doing yourself a favor.
But no, I'm very I will say I'm very, very lucky that I'm in a position, and very privileged that I'm in a position where I can work on my own hours. And maybe I'm just not most people who do 9 to 5. Maybe I work from 7 o'clock at night to 3 a.m. And you know what? I still get the work done. But I just wake up a little later than everybody. And
So
that's
get
okay.
over it.
And that's okay. But no, it's an interesting. I have to find what I can find, and sometimes it's that hot vanilla cream. You know.
You know, sometimes you just gotta imbibe.
Oh well, now that we've talked about different liquids for the last 20 minutes, Jesus, let's move on. Okay, let's talk about a story that I swear I already can feel the comments coming because. I swear we've covered this story.
Oh, you did this last time.
I know, but I swear we've covered this story before. We have not. We covered it on Sinisterhood, or they covered it with us when we did our guest swap.
Ooh, okay.
I think it was Sinisterhood.
What is it?
It's the Greenbrier Ghost.
The Greenbrier Ghost?
Yeah, that one. The Greenbrier Ghost.
Okay.
Which I also think you maybe mentioned. This is why I think I feel like we've covered it on the show before. Do you remember there was, I think, a Halloween special where we swapped stories and you did like a few little ghost stories or...
Oh! I did. Yes.
I think you mentioned it and you did like a smaller recap of it, but this is the long story of it.
Okay. This is because I did the, was it Ouija board stories or something?
That must have been it. Something like that.
But it was also a long time ago.
It was, but I was like, I swear to God, I've heard you talk about this before. But then I got caught up on like, oh, maybe it was because when we did our guest swap, maybe that's why. But anyway, we have never covered it personally on this show, other than your
other than when
version.
I did it.
Okay. And then I said, I'll do you one better. I'll do it.
Yeah, honestly, it will be better, so it's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, I was driving me crazy. I was like, I know this has been discussed. So this does happen to be called the Greenbrier Ghost because it's in Greenbrier County in West Virginia. Have you ever been to Greenbrier, especially the resort in Greenbrier County?
No, but I lived in the Greenbrier with Allison Goforth, which was the apartment complex that we lived in Washington, D.C. So I feel like that is more elite than anything you're about to talk about. It was full of cockroaches.
Hey, so is my place.
True.
Apparently, I live in the Greenbrier. Also, Christine, my dad, when my parents were separated, the first apartment complex he lived in was called the Greenbrier.
No way.
Also, to triangulate his self
was it in
the
DC?
90s. No, it was in Fredericksburg.
Oh, okay. Wow, must be just a popular name over there.
I guess not. Well, yeah, it does sound somewhat regal, and it's always used for roach-filled apartment complexes.
I was going to say, it's one of those like fancy names that kind of just doesn't mean much of anything. Maybe?
No, but the Greenbrier, I'm 99% sure, but now I'm paranoid that I'm talking out of my ass. So hang on, Greenbrier. Yes, okay, so I'm not wrong. Okay, so the Greenbrier Resort. I went there as a little kid. It was one of the first ghost experiences I had.
Oh, you've told me about this. Is this the one with like where the kitchen? The pots and pans? Oh my God.
Yeah, so we were the only people on the floor, unbeknownst to us. And I was sleeping on the floor because I was like a little kid and they gave us a cot. And we were next to the kitchen and you could hear the pots and pans banging all night long. And then the next day I had mentioned it to somebody and they're like, oh, that's been a closed kitchen for years. Like, people don't use that kitchen.
You know, you told that story when Deirdre was on the episode, like way back in the day.
Wow. That was episode 19.
Wow.
That was pre me ever meeting Allison. That's a crazy time.
Listen, and now I'm telling you all about Allison's and my past at the Greenbrier.
I love it.
Yeah.
What was your setup in that apartment complex?
I slept in the living room. We turned it into, it was literally a living room and I just put up like an IKEA shelf and slept behind the shelf.
That's sad.
It was sad. It was very sad. And then our other roommate would watch TV all night and it was like 2 feet from my head. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to drive me absolutely nuts.
Oh God.
And also, if you want it to be even sadder, all of us joined Weight Watchers at the same time. And like,
wow. So it was just
like the most pathetic, sad apartment of all time. Not due to me because I said, hey, everyone, let's do Weight Watchers together. Like, wow. Ouch. No, never again. Anyway, Let's get back to your thing.
Right. Well, so the Greenbrier Resort also, I have mentioned it before, but they have the old bunkers there. And so you can do the bunker tour. I think last time I was there, they still did the bunker tours, but it was where like the president was supposed to go if there was ever like an actual like bomb threat on the nation or something.
Scary.
Like nuclear war. But you could, it was so trippy to go through because it looked like it was a big like underground town and like
oh geez,
it was super like there was like different rooms. I mean, realistically, they looked like cells for beds, because it was not super pretty, but it did keep you alive, I guess. And they showed like where all the bulk food was and all the storage space was, and like the conference meeting rooms where they would have to like deliberate if something was going on. But it was definitely worth your time if you are a tourist in Greenbrier. I'm sure if you are local there, you've been dragged to the bunker tour a million times.
Yeah, probably.
But if you're like that person's aunt and you're in town, make them bring you to the Greenbrier bunker tour.
If you're the aunt of the person who's been dragged there, make them go one more time.
One more time. That's all it takes. So anyway, when I hear Greenbrier Ghost, that's the first thing I think of because the resort was very open about how haunted they were, and they kept mentioning the Greenbrier Ghost.
I see.
So Greenbrier County is in southeast West Virginia along the Appalachian Mountains on the Virginia border. So I feel like we're hugging with West Virginia in this story. And Greenbrier County in 1900, the population was 20,000.
Okay. Oh.
And in today's world, there's 35,000. So
okay, wow. So it's pretty big back then still. I mean,
it was pretty big back then and really hasn't changed in size all that much.
Yeah.
Although I think there's a fun fact about like what actually determines if you're a small town or not. And I think like 40,000 is the indicator. So it's technically
still a small town.
Because I looked it up and that's about the size of Fredericksburg is just under 35,000. So fun fact.
That was the population of cockroaches at the Greenbrier too. So I guess they did have their own small town inside.
Well, apparently they all hopped onto Allison's back and rode her to Los Angeles, and now they're all here. So
that's so thoughtful. Or they hopped on mine. I came first.
That's true.
And brought them over here. So who knows?
Thank you for your service, cockroaches.
You're so welcome.
And you. So in 1900, the population was about 20,000, and in 1876, not too far before that, Elva Zona Heister was born, and she went by her middle name Zona, and she lived with her mom in or near Crawley, West Virginia. And Crawley in 1900, just to give you an idea of how small it was actually considered a holler because it was smaller than a town, and it was a small unofficial community. And I guess what determines you being a town or not is if you have at least a population of 300.
Oh.
Because then you're officially on the census.
Wow.
So if you're under 300, you're a holler. And so it wasn't on the census in 1900, so I'm assuming it had to be less than 300 people living there in Crawley. Mm-hmm. And by the way, today's population is around 1,100, so now it is on the census.
Good for them.
Good for them. They made it. So we don't know much about Zona's early life, but we think she might have had a non-marital kid.
Okay.
Which would explain why she was known to be targeted for a lot of gossip and shame by the other people in town.
Sure.
So, and I guess we're putting two and two together that might have been the story there. So she was born in 1876, and in 1861, so quite an age gap, her future husband, Erasmus Stribling Shue, was born.
Oh my God, I remember this from Sinisterhood. We just came up with all the weirdo names. He had all sorts of weird names.
We had a lot of comments about his names.
Erasmus.
I mean, I don't know an Erasmus these days, but I feel like someone would have a comment. I don't know. Maybe it's the comments that it's a great name, but
yeah.
I don't think we said that on Sinisterhood.
I don't think so either.
Okay.
Also, he's like a shitty guy, so I think we also kind of hated him.
we were allowed to lean into it, I think.
Yeah.
So as an adult, Erasmus he moves to Greenbrier. He lived in the neighboring county, which is called...
Wasn't his name Fish?
We'll get there.
Okay. I felt like maybe I made that up in my head, so I just wanted to check. Okay. I think that's what we focused on. I don't think we focused on Erasmus. I think we focused on the fish part. Anyway.
I think you're right.
Okay.
We'll get there for sure. So as an adult, he moved to Greenbrier from the neighboring county, which was called Pocahontas County. Okay. And he moved to Greenbrier because he was also targeted by a lot of guilt and, I guess, bullying or gossip from his town. So he moved to Greenbrier to start over.
Okay.
But here's the thing. He was getting kind of a lot of shit in his county because he was a shitty person. So,
right.
he only wanted a new life to get away from his current reputation, which was that he was an asshole.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Meanwhile, we don't know why Zona was getting bullied around, but she happened to live in Greenbrier when he moved there, and that's how they found each other.
Okay.
So here's why he was shitty. He was married 2 times before. First of all, he was known to be like a just raging asshole. Let's just start there. But in his 2 marriages before he ever even met Zona, he had one wife named Allie. They had a kid together, and she did report that he was very abusive to her.
Oof.
And she only divorced him when he was in jail, which should tell you something too.
Yeah.
But he happened to be in jail, fun fact, because he tried to steal a horse.
Oh, sure.
So, I mean, maybe that was common back then, but to me, that sounds funky. That sounds weird.
Sounds a little off to me.
Like you couldn't steal anything else. Why a horse?
To be fair, that's like stealing a car.
Oh, yeah. He was. Yeah, okay. That's, you know what? Thank you for the perspective.
You know what? That's what I'm here for.
That's right. It was probably his getaway. He was like, well, I'm going to steal it and then get
getaway.
Out of here. His second wife, named Lucy Ann, she died after being struck in the head by a falling brick.
Oh, I remember that. Oh, no.
And I don't know any more information on that. I don't know how the brick fell or what the situation was, but it could have just been bad luck that it just happened. And weirdly enough, that only happened a year before Shu not just met Zona, but married Zona. So he very quickly moved on from his wife, who was very suddenly died. Mm-hmm. There is one report from the 1960s that claims that Allie, the first wife, also died suspiciously. This one was that she fell from a hayloft, which...
Oh.
The point is that there are rumors that both of his wives mysteriously died.
And then he left town.
After being claimed to be abusive. But there are several other records besides that one that says his first wife outlives him. So...
Oh, okay.
So I don't totally know that, but maybe for the lore, it's supposed to, make it sound like he's worse than he is. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so Shu moves to Greenbrier. He's working as a blacksmith, and he's working not even 15 miles away from Crawley, which is where Zona lives. And at this job is where he gets his nickname, Trout.
Oh, I kept saying fish.
I know.
Stupid.
I was like, you're almost there.
I was like, good for me. Like patting myself on the back. You have such a good memory. What is wrong with me?
I actually was impressed because I had to read the notes to be like, oh yeah, Trout. I forgot about that.
It's a fish. His name was Fish. Well, you said Shoe and remember Pants from last week. It got in my head,
I forgot about Pants, but
I didn't.
I'm embarrassed I forgot about Pants.
Well, I'm here to remind you. Remember, that's what I'm here for.
Well, yeah, we did make fun of the fact that his full name then was Trout Shoe. So,
Trout Shoe.
Which is, by the way, that's a fish flop.
I feel like that's
I'm
genius.
Just saying.
And there is the chance that we said that on Sinisterhood. And so if you've listened to that and you're like, you literally made that joke last time, sorry, but like it's so good.
I don't think I made it last time because I would have been like, I'll have to explain what a fish flop is.
I think maybe I said it. I feel like we talked about it, but maybe not. Maybe not.
Just know in hindsight, maybe I should have named my shoes Erasmus something. So Erasmus and Zona.
Oh my god.
Anyways, Trout Shoe.
It's good stuff.
That's probably the most creative thing I'm ever going to say for the next week. So
genuinely excellent stuff.
Let me just ride that high for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'll report the rest of this with a big, goofy, stupid smile on my face because I'm so proud of myself. So, Trout and Zona in 1896, they meet and then they get married that October. So very quick. I also don't know enough about 1896 to tell you what like the etiquette was for courtships at the time, but I guess you would get married pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, and like it doesn't sound like they were in any like elite circles, social circles where you know,
Right. They were,
necessarily.
I bet they really, when they first met, bonded over the fact that they were outcasts. And
Well, sure, yeah. And I mean they both had kids, right? Or do we not know if she had kids?
I don't know if she had a kid, like confidently, I don't know if she had a kid, but I do know that he had a kid with his first wife, but it also sounds like he probably
just
left that kid.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he's really concerned about taking care.
Right.
So, okay, all right, sorry.
So it's just the two of them. Also, if nobody likes them, that's an easy wedding to plan, you know?
Yeah, that's how you and I met. We were like, hey, nobody likes us. Let's talk all day.
It was nobody knows us. There's a difference.
Oh, sorry. I get that confused because for me, it's pretty similar. But
well, so they meet that year and get married in October. And there is one person who is not for this wedding, and it is Zona's mom.
Mother knows best.
Mother knows best. Hates this man.
Uh-oh, that's not a good sign. I mean, it depends on your mother, I guess, because
she probably could have just been like, girl, his name is Fish Flop, you know? Like, get the hint.
Take the universe's red flag and run.
So she was super against it. Her name was Mary, and only a few months later, like by Christmas or after Christmas, and they married in October. So 2 months into their marriage, Zona gets really sick, and she couldn't even get a diagnosis from the doctor. She basically just kind of was on bed rest.
Oh, no.
And some of the neighbors thought that she was maybe pregnant. And they remember Trout as being a doting husband at this time. But then again, I am aware that people can make themselves look different.
Appearances, yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But Zona only got worse, and it got to a point where she couldn't even get up and do normal household chores while Trout was at work. She just like couldn't keep it together. The last week of January, so now this is only like a full 3 months into their marriage, Trout leaves for work, and on his way, he stopped by the neighbors, and the neighbor's name was Martha Jones. Apparently, she was very well loved in town, very respected. They called her Aunt Martha.
I was going to say they called her Miss Martha, but Aunt Martha's good too.
Aunt Martha's good too. She just this does come into play later, so please bear with me, fellow anti-racists. But Aunt Martha was a Black woman. And she has I'm just saying, bear with me before you think I sound like my parents or something, where I'm just addressing random facts about
people's
a person.
like race, right? Or
yeah.
like oh, well, so-and-so is gay. Okay, and like, what does that have to do with the story? Yeah,
exactly.
I got you.
Okay, so Aunt Martha was a Black woman, and she had a tween. I don't know his exact age, but let's say 11 or 12.
She had a tween, okay.
When was the last time you heard someone use that?
2 seconds ago, and that might have been the first and last.
When I was a tween.
Yeah.
So, okay, his name was Andrew or Anderson, but a lot of sources were just rocking with Andy. So let's do that. And Trout told Aunt Martha and Andy that Zona was way too sick to work in their house today, and she was probably just going to be in bed all day. So he asked Aunt Martha if her son Andy would head over to the house eventually and help Zona collect eggs from their chicken coop. And then also said, while you're there, if there's anything else she needs help with, can you do the chores? And Andy said that he had his own stuff that he had to do that day, but he would get over there eventually that day before Trout came home from work. Trout did not like this.
What a responsible tween, though. Like, I've actually got a lot of errands to run today, but I will get over there to help your wife with her.
Why is this little kid responsible for the other neighbor's housework?
Genuinely,
I feel
like it doesn't seem, yeah.
Maybe someone else beat Trout to it, and he's like, I've got like 4 other houses I'm apparently responsible for today, so I'll get to you later, Trout.
Got a long list.
Yeah, exactly. So apparently, I don't know, he was just like, I've got something else going on. I'll catch you later, said the 12-year-old. And so Trout really had a problem with this. It got like, he was like, you need to go check on Zona.
Oh shit. Okay.
And later that day, he even stopped by the Joneses' house multiple times that day, 4 times that day to be exact.
Jesus.
To check if Andy has left yet to go check on Zona.
Okay, you are just a fucking terrible liar.
Exactly. It's like one of those, like, the murderer can't stay away from his own crime scene or something. It's
or like he's just being so fucking obvious. Like, have you gone to check? Because I can't do it. It's like, well, you've been here 4 times. Don't you have the time to go get eggs out of the fucking chicken coop?
Exactly. Like, what are you telling your boss that you're able to leave your blacksmith job 4 times?
It's just,
You know?
it's like you could be more useful than to just bother this tween every 10 minutes. But
Also, like, yeah, I'm sure this very responsible tween was able to think of like the time management skills, and he was like, the 4 times you've come here, you could have collected your own fucking eggs.
all the eggs that you needed. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like you could have gotten them later. Who cares? So, anyway, he's freaking out. He's like,
It's a
have you
shady
checked on
motherfucker.
Zona? And some say, because we all know where the story is heading, to be clear, you are in the right headspace if you're assuming what the rest of us are assuming. Some say that Trout just wanted Andy to get over there before he did, so that way Trout could have some sort of alibi of being at work, even though he was apparently with
Yeah.
Andy the whole time. But this is where I also mentioned that he could have wanted to put Andy at the scene of the crime, and it would have been way easy to point fingers at a young black boy,
I see.
especially in rural West Virginia.
I see.
And so anyway, that's kind
Super
of
duper.
the main idea of what was going on here. Especially because he was a kid, he probably wouldn't be able to defend himself well and all this stuff. So
Great.
eventually Andy does go check on Zona. He's like, for fuck's sake, Trout. I guess that's not what the tween said, but in his mind, in his mind, he thought it.
Yeah. We know he thought it. We all thought it.
Jesus Christ, Trout. You stupid fish flop. And so he heads over there. He goes to check on Zona, and he's knocking on the door, but no one answers. And so eventually,
boy.
concerned, he walks on inside. And on the floor, he finds Zona dead with her. This is a weird sighting. Her feet are pressed together. She has one arm at her side, one arm across her stomach, and her head tilted at a very odd angle.
Oh, God.
Andy runs home, and Aunt Martha runs home to his mom, Aunt Martha, and Aunt Martha runs to Zona and she tells Andy, go find Trout at work and tell him what's happened. So Trout comes back home from work, and he shows up just around the same time that Martha actually gets to the house too. So
Okay.
Dr. George Knapp shows up at the house. He's also the one who had been doing Zona's house calls when they said she was sick.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was probably the most experienced in, her medical history or her recent medical history. He gets there an hour after everybody else, and he tries to resuscitate Zona. And he ends up saying the quote, "It is an everlasting faint. Her heart has failed."
Well, that's fucking dramatic.
Very dramatic.
An everlasting faint.
That's what I call my naps when I feel like I went to another realm. I'm like, oh my God. I had one yesterday, and I was like, I know I wasn't on Earth for
You
the last hour.
escaped your body. Yeah. You left your husk
did.
behind. Yeah.
I truly, I was finally successful. It was like the beginning of one of those horror movies where the soul can't get back to its body. I was gonzo. Anyway, it was an everlasting faint. So he did, however, this doctor, he did note that Trout had already moved Zona's body by the time he got there.
How nice. Great.
And he had changed her clothes.
Ew.
He had changed her into a dress with a stiff, high collar around the neck.
Mysterious.
Interesting. A high collar around the weird head tilts that she's got going on.
Interesting.
It was particularly weird because I guess the etiquette or the tradition or the custom of the time is that the women in the community would have prepared her body for funeral.
Yeah,
or for a burial.
It's kind of weird that, it is weird. I feel like that would be something that her mother would have done
or wanted to be involved in, wanted to help with.
It just seems odd that before the doctor arrived, you'd be like, let me get her dressed in a different outfit.
Well, also the outfit for her funeral and within an hour of her being dead.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's gross.
You know what I mean?
Nothing good.
And I guess that was one of his excuses for the doctor when he was like, we have to perform an autopsy. He probably was just like, oh, well, she's already dressed.
She's already dressed. I'm sorry. It's like, it took me a lot to put this dress on this deceased person. Ugh. Sicko.
Also, Trout... the doctor. Sorry, I read the wrong name there. So the doctor, he wanted a closer look at her because he was like, this is already funky, this whole situation. Something's going on.
At least he's got the wherewithal to sense that,
Yeah, he was like, I want to take a closer look at her. But not only had Trout moved the body and dressed her, but as the doctor came in and until he left, held Zona's head in his lap and refused to let it go and refused anyone to get near her face.
Trout did?
Trout did.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
So he was very protective of the part of her that might be suspicious.
How interesting.
Even when the doctor at least tried to move the collar to get a look at her neck, he was like, absolutely not. You're not going to get close enough to look at her.
Mm-mm.
Knapp did notice discoloration on her cheek. I would argue that once you're dead, though, maybe that's already beginning or something like that. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much information that gave him. But before anything else Trout could notice, or anything the doctor could notice, Trout insisted that the doctor leave the body alone and to never perform an autopsy. And the doctor was like, that tracks, I guess, and didn't do an autopsy.
Maybe he didn't have probably didn't have the jurisdiction to be like,
yeah, maybe he was like,
do one. I mean,
maybe
I think
it's a consent thing.
I
or
think
something.
it probably is. Maybe even now, because I know that now when someone passes, there's like a chain of command as far as are they cremated, that kind of thing. So I wonder if it's like, well, no, it's my wife and I don't want an autopsy. I bet there's probably not much he could do.
Yeah, I don't know. So it's anyway, I guess he said no autopsy and the doctor went, okay, goodbye.
Yikes.
Here's an odd thing though, that I feel like we should focus more on this, and my guess is that the doctor got paid off to leave the body alone.
Oh, okay.
Because and there's no proof of that. This is totally my thought on this because we never get an explanation for it. But the doctor says that her cause of death is listed as childbirth, even though there is no evidence of a pregnancy, labor, or baby.
What?
And even in his own words, he said it was heart failure. An everlasting faint. Her heart has failed.
Hell?
So I think that's weird. Or maybe like he gave a different cause of death
That's
and like
sketchy.
the files were written up differently somehow. I don't know who.
Sketchy.
And we never get an answer about that. I just think it's so weird.
It is weird. It's very weird.
So at Zona's wake, it was hosted in their home, and Trout never leaves her side. And by her side, I mean his literal spot next to her head.
Mm-hmm.
Not only was he guarding it, but he had put cloth on either side of her head so that it wouldn't move, and it actually kept her head tilted in that weird way.
Oh, God.
In hindsight, I'm wondering if it's because he couldn't move it back. But
Jesus Christ, that's sick.
And his reasoning, if anyone asked him about it, was because it made her more comfortable.
Ew.
Mm-hmm.
What is... fuck this guy, seriously.
Keep in mind, not only was he being fishy about her head, but even Andy, the little kid, reported her head being tilted at the crime scene in a very weird way. So people know that her head looks weird.
Mm-hmm.
And some people knew something was up, including Zona's mother, who never liked Trout.
Mm.
And her mother actually somehow got Trout to agree that she could have a sheet from the casket to take home with her. And she noticed a few days later that it smelled really bad. And I still don't understand what science could have caused this. I don't know that information. But she said the sheet smelled really bad, so she went to wash it or put it in like a bath with water, and it turned blood red all of a sudden. That part feels paranormal and also maybe like maybe dramatic flair.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe a little bit leading into M's favorite word, lore.
But okay, pretend we're around a campfire and I'm gonna say it again.
Oh, okay. Let me hold on. Crackle, okay. Crackle, crackle, crackle.
Pop, pop. You know, sometimes it pops. Okay. She puts the sheet in a bin of water, and it turned blood red. I don't know what to tell you about that.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this sheet not only turned blood red, but it slowly faded to pink, and no cleaning could ever make it white again.
Cool. I hate that.
That's the scary part for like the person who does the laundry in the house, who's like, no, I can't bleach it.
Not even bleach. I mean, that's not good.
So because of this, I mean, this is a crucial part of the story. I really don't know what the actual thing must have been. Maybe she saw some blood on it when she got a closer look at it
And couldn't get the stain out. Who knows? Yeah.
Can't get the stain out. So she went to bed praying for an answer about what the fuck was going on, what happened to her daughter. It was so random that that something happened. And she woke up to the ghost of her daughter Zona pacing her room. And she went to even touch her to be like, are you real? And Zona faded away. And this is so convenient because then all of a sudden her mom started praying again, being like, no, 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 come back. And Zona came back.
Oh, she's like, fine.
What a convenient ghost. So she asked Zona, she's like, tell me what happened to your body. And I guess Zona at first struggled with figuring out how to speak as a ghost, but was able to finally tell her. And not only that, but came back 3 more nights after that to debrief further.
Just a long story.
It's a 4-day conversation.
I'd be exhausted. This is like when I try to have a sleepover. You try to have a sleepover with me, and I'm like, I'm going to sleep, and you're like, actually, just one more thing.
I'm like, but it's finally my
like,
my
it's only
daytime.
5 a.m. and I'm like, oh my god.
I know. I do feel bad for people that like have like adult sleep times, and I'm like, oh, it's 3 a.m. time to like really party now, and they're like, okay, well,
seriously,
this
one
is not
time I
fun.
remember you being like, now that you have a baby, you'll never have a sleepover with me again. I'm like, I would go to bed at like midnight during our sleepovers anyway, so I don't think that
I know, but I had a better chance without another factor crying in the other room, who you will prioritize over me.
That thing
Which
sleeps
is fair.
12 hours a night, and I feel like this is prime sleepover time because
I feel like that's true. That's a good point. Before she wants to get in on the sleepovers, and now we've got a third crashing the party. You know what I'm saying?
honestly, she'll probably be the one having parties with you. I'll just go to sleep.
I will say, I like that she sleeps during the night and I sleep during the day. So you always get you always get someone,
You know what? Aren't I lucky? And we're just going to leave it at that.
You're so lucky.
Good for me.
Also, you really should count your lucky stars, because when all of a sudden she is of sleepover age, her and me are going to have so much fun after you go to bed and be like, we're going to drink chocolate milk. It's going to be crazy.
She and I. So, just correct your grammar before you start a sleepover.
Before I start influencing your child in the wrong ways.
You're like, we're gonna have fun without you, and then I'm like, well, let me correct your grammar first, and you're like, yeah, I told you, we're gonna have so much fun without you.
First it's grammar, and then I just influence her all the way to drugs or something. Who knows? So
yeah, warm cream or whatever the fuck, hot cream.
Yeah, thank you for proving to me, Ravenclaw, that you don't need to be at the sleepover after midnight. I'm gonna use that next time I have a sleepover with her, and she can comprehend what I'm saying, and be like, you know what your mom tried to fucking tell me just to keep herself invited.
This fucking lady.
Okay. Anyway, oh yeah, they 4 nights of debriefing about what happened to her, and with this intel, her mom then began letting everyone know around town what happened, and it was kind of easy to spread the information. First of all, it was a small town. It was like less than 300 people. And West Virginia...
It was a holler.
Oh, it was a holler. You're right. Ravenclaw. And so she...
I'm the worst.
You and I went to the holler. Okay.
I mean...
Well, and you get to stay there while I leave.
That's correct. Thank you.
So... One, it was a holler. It was a very small area, like 300 people or less. And West Virginia, even then, was notoriously superstitious. So as soon as the mom started saying, I'm seeing this ghost who's telling me what really happened to Trout, it wasn't that hard to convince people, or to at least get the word out there. So she even convinces her brother-in-law to go with her to talk to an attorney named John A. Preston. And he agreed that he wanted to take on the case. And when he talked to Dr. Knapp, Dr. Knapp said the cause of death was potentially inaccurate and that Trout forbade an autopsy. But it's like, why are you saying that the cause of death is potentially inaccurate? You're the one that gave the cause of death with no information.
As child. Well, I guess he's saying he couldn't confirm.
I guess.
I mean,
autopsy. Maybe this has been lost to history, but maybe Trout said something like, "Oh, there was, a complicated childbirth or something prior, and she's
right." Because wasn't there? I feel like, I don't remember that well, but wasn't there a part where he was seeing her for like a potential pregnancy, the doctor? Didn't she think she might be pregnant or something?
Though there was a rumor for when people start wondering why she was talked about around town. We don't know why, but for some reason we think she might have had a child that we don't know about, and it was.
But I mean, like right before she died, wasn't the doctor seeing her for?
The doctor was seeing her just because she was so sick she couldn't get out of bed, and the town thought maybe.
Oh,
sorry, the
I
hauler
for some reason thought that
she,
he had said she was pregnant or something, but I guess not. He just made
the
that to her.
rumors were circulating that she might have been pregnant because she couldn't get out of bed.
Gotcha.
But we never heard anything else about that.
Okay.
Honestly, I wonder, that would have been a good out for Trout, though, because he could have been like, oh, well, you know, she might have been pregnant, or it could have been anything, but we really don't know. She was just sick. People thought it was pregnancy, and I'm sure he could have used that as an excuse and maybe convinced the doctor that childbirth complications were, or pregnancy complications were what caused it.
Right.
So anyway, even the doctor was like, the cause of death is, you know, not
Unclear.
Yeah, it's not a certainty. So after he tells that to the lawyer then questioned others and ultimately ordered that Zona's body be exhumed, which was totally unheard of in the area. And a bunch of locals even freaked out and like threatened like to try to get this guy arrested for doing something like that.
Jeez.
I also wonder if it's because West Virginia is superstitious and they thought maybe like messing with a body after death was just like not okay.
It's hard to get that through legislation even now. Not through legislation. It's hard to get that through even now if you're trying to exhume a body. Like it takes a lot.
Yeah.
Of
and
sway.
so they officially exhumed her body February 22nd, 1897, which was only a month out of her dying.
Okay.
And luckily it was February, so the ground was preserved very well and her body was preserved very well. So the doctor plus 2 other doctors and a 5-man jury all autopsied the body at a nearby schoolhouse.
Oh, you love a good schoolhouse.
Now that's the schoolhouse I would be doubly interested in seeing.
Yes.
You're like, oh, there's additional history here.
This is quite a lot. This building has seen a lot.
I wonder if it even exists anymore. So many of them have gotten knocked down. If it is open, I got to get myself to West Virginia.
If you're the aunt of somebody who's gone to this schoolhouse many times, let us know.
So the autopsy showed what we all pretty much expected: a dislocated neck,
Oh, God.
torn ligaments, and a crushed windpipe.
Oh, this poor woman.
This put Trout squarely in jail at the Greenbrier County Jail for first-degree murder. Although the evidence was circumstantial. It was just kind of, oh, well, she obviously broke her neck and he was acting weird about it. It wasn't as obvious as your story last week of a literal blood trail. So
Yeah. Right. And the guy never went to jail, so.
Right, exactly. So Trout, another thing though is that Trout reportedly bragged throughout the community that he would never get convicted of this, and he didn't even try to
Ew.
flee because he was so confident that he wouldn't be put to jail for this.
That's gross.
I know, like not
Fuck
even
this guy.
I don't know what other conversations were being had, but it sounds like he was not even remorseful, and he wasn't even nervous that this was now the 3rd wife of his to potentially mysteriously die.
And he fled town before, so it's not like it would be the first time, but he's like, nah.
Also, he married her like 3 or 4 months ago. Like this is a brand new love. Like he should be so distraught. So distraught.
Yeah. No.
So there's now 4 months later, June 22nd, 1897. The case is the state of West Virginia versus E.S. Shrew. Sorry.
I was like, again, another one?
Here's a fun fact. That Trout had 2 state-assigned defense attorneys, and one of them was James Gardner, who was the first Black attorney to practice in a West Virginia circuit court.
Oh, well, you said Jane at first. I was like, oh, a woman. But it's not a woman, right?
I think it's James with an M. James.
James.
So, James, maybe.
I was going to say, are you sure it's not just James?
It's my own stupid typo, I'm probably sorry. But no, I certainly think it would have also mentioned woman. If,
yeah. But still, that's cool, though.
Yeah, first black attorney to practice. And I feel bad that he got the
Yeah,
case
of
where he
all
had to
fucking
defend
people.
a murderer. Yeah. But during the trial, Preston kept Zona's mother from testifying. Preston was the lawyer, the original lawyer that was helping her. He kept Zona's mother from testifying because if she mentioned the ghost story, it would discredit the trial and just be thrown out as hearsay.
Yeah.
But the defense called her to the stand anyway, and she immediately told them the ghost story right away.
She's like, finally, someone wants to hear it.
Yeah. So according to the mom, she said that Zona's ghost told her this, that the night before she was found, she was still very, very sick and had cooked Trout dinner anyway. But when Trout came home for work, he saw the dinner and he was mad that she didn't make him any meat with his meal.
What a fucking asshole. I'm sorry.
And strangled her to death.
Jesus.
I got nothing.
It's just like so stupid. Like it's so cliche. Like it sounds like made up, you know? Like
it sounds it's like, oh, he's mad that he assaulted you because you didn't make him dinner or you didn't make it the right way. And
you
like,
did make dinner, just not good enough. Like, oh
yeah, and also you were already like bedridden sick, but you still found a way to cook, and then it goes that underappreciated, and then he fucking kills you. Like,
this
what
motherfucker? I tell you.
I know. So
I love that I
anyway.
know the story a little bit beforehand because, like you said, it is really hard to bite my tongue. Like if I didn't know what the story was, I just love that I can be like, this fucking asshole the whole time.
It is nice when we know if we're allowed to like
to just like
cast
shit on
judgment.
somebody. Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like you have to really bite your tongue a lot during my stories because I sometimes like plot twist and you're like, oh, oops.
I know. I'm always like, am I allowed to feel bad for this person?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
I know, and this is also very, very, very like a perfectly shared story for us because it's very true crime, but it is also paranormal. So
yes.
I feel like I'm stealing your thunder, but you You did it. So
I guess I did do it. Yeah, I clearly stole your thunder first. So
no, you're fine. So anyway, he strangles her to death because she didn't make him any meat.
Fantastic.
And Mary the mom did not budge on her story despite the defense trying to make her look basically delusional. Like,
Sure.
Oh, you saw a ghost. Okay. And there's a paper called the Greenbrier Independent who, the next week wrote some of the, dialogue that had been happening in the courtroom. And the defense asked, this is a quote from the defense. I've heard you've had some dreams or visions that led to this post-mortem examination. And then her mom said, it was no dream. She came back and told me. He was mad that she didn't have no meat cooked for supper. She told me something about that meat every other night that she came. She came 4 times, but the second night she told me that her neck was squeezed off at the first joint. And it was just as she told me. So
Wow.
Mary told the defense that one of the nights she asked Zona's ghost about the dress she was killed in. And Zona allegedly turned her head completely around and looked at Mary like she wanted Mary to know all about it. I love that in in a different world, this would be like just mentioning someone's dress and they turn around just to be like, oh my God, I can't wait to say everything.
I've been waiting for you to ask me.
It does have pockets. It does have pockets.
That's good.
So Mary said, I just wanted the particulars about her death and I got them. And then she even claimed that at one point she was able to reach out and actually touch Zona without her fading away.
Wow.
Mary even said that despite having never been to the shoe house, which by the way, that feels like a red flag to me that you've never been to your own daughter's home, but I guess they've only been living together for like 3 months. So
Right.
Even though she'd never been to the house, Zona was able to direct her through the house. And she did actually, I guess, know the path to Zona's body and even found blood on the doorframe just where it was in real life, where the ghost said that it would be. And this is where the defense realized that her story was actually making sense and was not a good look for them.
Yeah.
And that they had messed up because
Backfired.
if she had told the ghost story during with the prosecution, it would have been hearsay, but with the defense, it couldn't get thrown out and the judge had to include it in his considerations.
Mm-hmm.
So when Trout took the stand, his demeanor was really weird and he denied everything. And the Greenbrier Independent, the same paper, they ended up writing a quote about this case saying, "There is no middle ground for the jury to take. The verdict inevitably and logically must be for murder in the first degree or for an acquittal."
Wow.
It's like, basically, do you believe in a ghost or not?
Yeah. Either this is a murder by this guy or
not.
Or not. Well, okay, yeah, I guess. So wait. Hang on. Wouldn't that always be the two options?
I guess so, but it's either you believe in a ghost story that is confirming that he's responsible, or you don't believe in a ghost story where there's no proof that he did it.
Right. Okay. I follow.
The only differing thing is if you believe in ghosts
whether
or not.
this ghost story is true. Right.
Yeah. So deliberation took only just over an hour, like 10 minutes over an hour, and the jury declared that Trout was guilty and recommended mercy, which was life in prison versus the death sentence.
Wow.
And Trout said, a quote from him was, "The prosecution was all spite work," aka like the town was against him, the holler was against him, and so he had no chance, even if it was a fake ghost story that got him in jail.
Like they were biased, sort of.
Yeah, which makes sense. Everyone hated this guy, so
yeah.
And the public was outraged that they even suggested mercy, and they all wanted him to die. So 2 years later, when he was on his way to prison, a mob tried to kill him.
Oh, boy.
And then it ended up being de-escalated, luckily. But
that's probably good.
But they definitely were upset that he was going to get life in prison. They thought that wasn't enough. But so Trout ends up getting life in prison and goes to jail. He goes to Moundsville, aka the West Virginia State Penitentiary, aka episode 290. And he died there in 1900 during the flu epidemic, and no one claimed his body, so he is buried in an unmarked grave, probably at that prison.
Wow.
So in 1916, Mary, Zona's mom, died, but she always stuck with her ghost story that it was true, and some believed that some believed that the story was true, and some people believed that it was not true, but they all hated Trout enough and knew he was probably guilty that she just found a weird loophole to get him in jail.
Yeah, I remember vaguely from the Sinisterhood episode 2, we were talking about the possibility that the ghost story part was made up, but she knew that he had killed her and was like, I'm just going to find a way to get people to believe me. Like, I saw the dress, I saw her neck. I know he did it, but like, I need to find like some fanciful way to convince people, which is also an interesting theory.
Well, here's more to that theory. So in 1999, Katie Letcher Lyle, she wrote a book about the case called The Man Who Wanted 7 Wives, The Greenbrier Ghost, and the Famous Murder Mystery of 1897. Katie, long title, gotta be honest.
Katie, I fucking love it. Don't listen to it.
Katie, that title looks like it covered the whole book, but you know what? I'm glad I know what I'm getting into before I crack it open. Fun fact about the book is that when it came out, a newspaper editor named Fred Long called her. And the editor called her to say that, oh, hey, did you know that the same paper, the Greenbrier Independent, the same paper that reported on the trial, they had also, months before the trial, published an obituary for Zona. And did you know that in that issue, that day's paper that had Zona's obituary in it, there was also an article about a ghost story solving a murder in Australia.
Oh my.
And so it took over 100 years, but now the theory is that Zona's mother was probably reading her daughter's obituary and saw that article.
My gosh.
And it inspired this whole plan she hatched of a ghost told me how I died.
Wow.
Or a ghost told me how she died. So good memory, Christine.
That is like so startling. Wow.
Here is an excerpt from the article. One of the most famous murders in Australia was discovered by the ghost of the murdered man sitting on the rail of a dam into which his body had been thrown. Numberless people, or countless people, I've never heard numberless before, but okay.
I like that though.
Numberless people saw it and the crime was duly brought home. Years after, a dying man making his confession said that he invented the ghost. He witnessed the crime but was threatened with death if he divulged it as he wished to, and the only way he saw out of the impasse was to see the ghost where the body would be found. As soon as he started the story, such is the power of nervousness that numerous other people began to see it until its fame reached such dimensions that a search was made and the body found and the murderers brought to justice. So
Wow.
he accidentally created like a group psychosis. Like they were all like, oh, I saw the ghost too. I saw the ghost too.
Oh my gosh.
And it was all because he was threatened to not say something. So he just made up a story that helped people find it anyway. So
This is shocking. Wow.
So she probably read that and went, oh, if he could do it, I could do it.
Fuck yeah. And guess what she did?
And she did. And so the case has gone down in history. It's also inspired plays and books. Lyle, the author of the very long titled book, has even asked Greenbrier residents about the case when she was doing research for her book. And she learned additional folklore has kind of grown out of the story. So one person said that when Zona died, the town heard wolves howling.
Whoa.
Another person said that when Trout tried to wash the bedding, the sheets turned to blood. So all this kind of, there's been little things that have been added over the years. Also in 1991, a historical marker was erected in Greenbrier declaring Zona Heaster-Shue, quote, the only known case in which testimony from a ghost helps convict a murderer.
Wow.
And it happened to be her murderer.
And goose cam.
And as for the mother, she's buried in Soul Chapel Methodist Cemetery in Greenbrier. So anyway, that is the Greenbrier Ghost.
I gotta say, I just got goose cam. That is quite a tale.
Quite a tale.
My God, I just like, gives me the shivers. This poor woman. I mean, at the heart of it, it's just really fucking sad.
I know, especially man, but like, hey, a mother's love. You're willing to do anything.
You
huh?
know what? Fuck yeah. Get it,
Yeah.
Mary. I mean, I absolutely believe he killed her. And remember the 7 wives thing? Because that was in her title. Do you remember that?
I do. And I don't know if he had 7. He must have.
No. He was like
What?
on a quest to get 7 wives or something, he said. Like he,
that
he
would
was
make
like on his 3rd or 4th and then he went to jail and he had never reached his 7th wife or whatever. It was like some weird thing he had where he wanted to get 7 wives, which is so gross.
Well, that would make sense then why he married her in so quickly.
so
tried to kill her.
rapidly. Yeah.
Yeah. And also just that piece of information lets you know that the other 2 that maybe mysteriously died, it doesn't sound so mysterious anymore. So
No, a brick falling on your head. How odd.
Mm-hmm.
And then he fled town. I'm just saying. It's fishy. Get it?
Fishy. It's trouty. That's what it is.
Oh, that's a great story. It's fucking sad, but it's a great story. So good job. Sorry I kept interrupting. I just like
No, I'm glad that you could give input. Usually, maybe it's because it was a true crime story, and all of a sudden there was
maybe
like
that's why I
facts to go off of.
remembered some stuff. But like, yeah, that was a fun Sinisterhood episode we did too.
It was. Everyone go listen to them. They are lovely, lovely people.
All right, I have a doozy for you today. Okay, this is a story that was featured in The Gift of Fear, one of my favorite books that I talk about all the time.
Oh my God, I don't even read books, and you've been making me talk about it lately.
This one only has 4 words in the title.
That's true. That's why it's easier for me to remember. If I had to start shouting out Katie's book everywhere, I'd be like, I don't know, man.
Poor Katie.
Something. Sorry,
woman.
Katie. I do appreciate that you wrote the book, and also your title alone gave us a new fun fact that I was not aware of. But
yeah.
I wouldn't be able to recite the title to people. But Gift of Fear, I do know that one, also because you scream it every 5 seconds.
I talk
at me.
about it a lot.
I've started using it now. I'm like, oh, it's just like that book Christine always talks about. Oh, it's just like that book Christine always talks about.
See, I've had a few people tag me and say, they got a copy, or I personally, I have a copy and I listened to it this year again on Audible. I like the Audible version, just because I know I said this already, but he does like it because the book was written in the 90s, so some of it is a bit outdated, as far as just not the information, but maybe some of the like terms and stuff.
Sure.
But he does give like a kind of a foreword in the Audible book or the audiobook where he discusses, COVID and the pandemic and how that has kind of escalated domestic violence and stuff. So it's kind of interesting to hear his like current take. And he reads the book, which I always appreciate when the authors do that. So,
and it is interesting to have that. Just to know that he's even addressed it, because I remember one of the very first things people thought about when it came to being locked inside was like, there are people who are locked inside with their abusers.
With their abusers. It's
Yeah.
terrifying. It's really, really, it was really scary. And, oof, God, I keep getting goose cam today. So the story that I'm going to tell you is the stalking of Laura Black. And stalking is one of those concepts that just really pisses me off because it's just so not taken seriously by law enforcement. There's really not much in place, especially when this story took place, which was the 80s. And so the whole concept of Gavin de Becker's book is that he works on cases like this, like very high intensity, high profile, like stalking cases. And he aims the book mostly at women. And he explains that in the beginning because typically that is the victim of most stalking cases, and describes, certain instincts you might have that we've been taught to ignore, and how you can kind of take those and actually act on them and listen to them. And so that's something I know for a lot of people is hard, including myself, which is why I just really love this book. But so the stalking of Laura Black is featured in this book, and you're going to see why, because it's talk about a doozy. Talk about a fucking doozy.
I'm already mad. I mean, obviously I agree with you, but just to back you, that it really is so scary how little stalking is taken seriously.
Yeah.
And I've somehow fallen into stalking TikTok. So my world has been kind of extra consumed with seeing how unfair so many people's stories are.
So unfair. And of course, any of these true crime stories are unfair, but it's just one of those things.
It's just so frustrating that it's so clear to. It's just one of those things where I feel like it's so rooted in masculinity, toxic masculinity, of like so many people in the world can see how clearly dangerous this is, and the other half of the world just goes, "Well, what's the big deal?"
Yeah, or like, "There's nothing we can do,"
Yeah, there's nothing we can do.
And then guess what? Oftentimes it's too fucking late.
And then they go, we couldn't have seen this coming. It's like,
yep.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Amen. Hey, look, we only had 4 words in the title. You summed up the whole fucking book. Okay, so
is that impressed. we could have seen this coming? Oh no, I didn't know if
not quite.
I don't know if I said the title by accident or something.
So let's get into the story. In April 1984, Laura Black, who was only 22 years old, had just finished her master's degree in computer science and was heading to Silicon Valley. She had gotten a kick-ass job as a freaking engineer. Okay. And again, this is the 80s, and, women in STEM. Get it, girl. So she's 22. She moves from Virginia all the way to Sunnyvale, California. She was starting her career at Electromagnetic System Laboratory, aka ESL Incorporated, or just ESL.
Ooh. Okay.
So this company, ESL, is a defense contractor that supplied services to NASA, the U.S. military, and even NATO sometimes. So this is like very high profile job. Laura had only had about a year of professional experience in the field, but she was so skilled that she beat a number of other candidates to get this job, and was able to land basically her dream job as an electrical engineer in Silicon Valley. So just like making moves, making waves at 22 years old. The company, ESL, had roughly 2,500 full-time employees, and they had a lot of big contracts and large amounts of funds just being constantly moved through, especially because they had these government contracts, and therefore there was a lot of security. So they worked with defense, and so classified information was a big part of the job. And so many employees needed to have high-level security clearances, and this became, a big part of what's going to happen here.
Sure.
So, working at a company like this, having a criminal record doesn't totally disqualify you necessarily, but it does make it harder to get into the job and also to get higher level security clearance. So that to say, most of the people who were working here had a pretty squeaky clean record and were like, they had been fully vetted for this kind of a job.
Sure.
So when Laura arrived, her coworkers took to her immediately. She was young, friendly, engaging. I will say I watched a TV movie about this last night called Stalking Laura, aka, and that was a UK title. The US title was I Can Make You Love Me. Yikes.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Creepy. And it was a 1993 made-for-TV movie starring Brooke Shields as Laura Black. I know. She showed up. I was like, huh? Wow. Hey,
Brooke,
is that you?
Get off the screen. What are you doing here?
What are you doing? But it was the movie. It's pretty good. It has like great reviews, and it's known as like one of the better made for TV movies.
Okay.
It does definitely have its like cheesiness. Like when she's driving through the countryside, it has like this like gentle saxophone music that's just like very 90s, and
just as natural as it's ever been.
Yes, exactly. It's just like a little bit cringy, but they I thought they did a pretty good job. It's cool. a good flick. So anyway, she's young, friendly. She's beautiful. She smiled at everyone she met. She's just like one of those very outgoing people. She dove right into her new life in California. She joined an aerobics class. She signed up for the company's softball team. She started a biking club at the company. Like, she was just all over it.
She said, I'm going to make friends and no one's going to tell me otherwise.
And I'm going to be so fit that they won't be able to catch up with me.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'll be your friend, but I'm not attending the aerobics class or the softball game or the biking club.
My Bumble BFF profile literally ends with, please don't make me hike.
Please
so like,
don't.
It's like, here's all the things I'm willing to do, but I swear to God, please do
I'm like
not make
so
me hike.
open-minded. Just don't make me move, please.
And also, now that you're mentioned, I should also add aerobics classes in my account as well. Anything that's going to make me sweat, I just don't want to do it.
No, one time Renee made me go to a Soul Cycle class in Beverly Hills, and I was like, I've never even been on a spin bike before. Like, it was most.
It's scary,
embarrassing, horrific. It was just so bad. It was so many levels of bad. Like, never again.
No, I've been there, and I've gotten up and left in the middle of the class. I went, this was a mistake.
I walked up to the bike, and this woman came up and was like, "This is my bike," and I was like, "I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm here."
Girl, like, be nice. Like,
no,
I get your. Like,
they won't.
Boy.
Anyway, so she's very, very outgoing, very enthusiastic, very active. She was even attending college courses outside of work to further her education. Keep in mind, she has a master's already, has a job, all while working full time. So just energy for days, super social. Hustle, and just an easy to get along with person. This, of course, caught the interest of one of her male coworkers pretty immediately when she started at the company. While one of Laura's new coworkers was walking her around the office to introduce her to everybody, she met a man named Richard Farley.
Okay.
Rich had been born in 1948, and he was 35, so he was 13 years older than Laura. He spent 10 years in the Navy before he retired and joined the ESL team as a computer technician in 1977. He was considered a pretty low-key guy. He didn't have a wife or kids at home. He wasn't very social. He had 5 siblings, but he hadn't spoken to most of them in years. And some coworkers kind of thought he was arrogant or had a big ego. But he had top security clearance, no criminal record. Although one coworker had reported that he had in some way harassed 2 coworkers in the past, but there were no real specifics about that.
Okay.
And nothing had ever been done about it. So life just kind of moved on and they were left alone. When Laura met Richard on her first day in the office, she couldn't imagine how absolutely horrific he would make her life and essentially put her through hell. Richard, on the other hand, had fallen in love from the moment he laid eyes. That's what he said. Fallen in love the moment he laid eyes on her. Of course, this was a twisted, obsessive, and pretty sick love that would become Laura's living nightmare. Again, Laura had no idea, because how would you? And shortly after she started at ESL, she went out to eat with Richard and another coworker. They just all 3 of them went out to lunch. It was very professional, just a friendly lunch with coworkers. Everyone paid for their own meals and they talked about neutral topics. And after that, Laura never spent time with Richard outside of work again. But by this point, Richard was obsessed.
And let me guess, he saw it as like their first date or some bullshit like that.
Absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. You nailed it. So Laura's problem started really quickly. Richard asked her out on a date and she politely turned him down because 1, he was 13 years older than her. She wasn't interested in such a wide age gap. And 2, she wanted to maintain professional boundaries with her coworkers. And 3, she just wasn't fucking interested. So guy, you don't need multiple reasons. Just no means no.
No is a full sentence.
Correct. So this, she's 22. She already knows that the odds are stacked against her because she is a woman in this like very male dominated field, a young woman. It's already like she's already climbing an uphill battle being,
Yeah.
taken seriously in a professional environment like that.
I know. I was going to say she's probably already prepared like to come in swinging, like to prove that she's worth anyone's time.
Exactly. And I don't know how much of this is true or just kind of like creative input from the team who made this made for TV film, but they talked, they had a line in there where someone said like, you need to talk to HR, and she said something like, I'm the only woman in my office, like in my team, and there are people there waiting for me to go home and play with my dolls. Like I can't give them a reason to be like, oh, she's causing drama or causing problems. And so, she's kind of stuck in like a tough place, which is why it pisses me off when people like blame women for this kind of thing, I mean,
oh yeah. Well, also like, yeah, you're right. She had the odds completely stacked against her because we haven't even gotten far into the story. And I already know that there were probably people at this office who thought she asked for it in some way.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. 100%. Remember, she smiles at people she meets. So.
Oh, right. But it's either that or like last week, you don't smile and you're abrasive. So.
Exactly. You don't smile enough. Oh boy. You can't win. You can't win. So Laura didn't want to snub Richard because they worked together, but she also didn't want to encourage him. So in an interview, she said, I tried not to ignore him, but to be cordial. So Richard was not discouraged. He launched a full-scale pursuit that turned into daily harassment for poor Laura. He wrote her love letters, which he left on her desk. He stopped by her office a dozen times a day to nonchalantly ask what she was up to, as if, an hour ago anything had changed.
It's like,
between
well,
the last
what's going
time he
on?
showed up.
What's going on is you wrote me a love letter, and I'm still trying to avoid
and it's
that. So
in the trash, and I'm trying to work, and you keep bothering me.
Yeah.
And so he called her desk every couple hours throughout the day, every single day. He started leaving gifts on her desk, even homemade bread. And Laura turned down Richard's advances every time, but kindly. He was making her nervous, but she did her best to maintain a professional work environment. But of course, Richard escalated. He started leaving letters on her car in the ESL parking lot. One night, he showed up at Laura's aerobics class. And Laura had never mentioned where she did aerobics and realized, oh, he must have followed me here. Yeah.
Yep.
This is where I'm starting to get goose cam again.
Wow, he really wasted no fucking time.
No time. Not a minute. And it's so shocking because you think like, well, somebody like this, obviously there's like a background, but like no criminal background, squeaky clean. Never,
well, also, again, toxic masculinity. So many guys are taught that if she says no, then you just haven't pursued her the right way.
Yeah.
So, by the way, this is a PSA to anybody, but especially if you happen to run in circles with people who identify as men, please, if you see this behavior, check them because it's not cute and no means no, and people don't need to be pursued. Take the hint.
Yeah, they'll let you know if they change their mind.
Yeah.
So she realized he's following her and learning her schedule. And in fact, Richard apparently told a coworker he did aerobics with Laura. Then he literally said, well, actually, I'm not going with her. I follow her there.
Oh, so just straight up saying it.
Yeah. And the coworker did nothing. So Richard started inserting himself into every corner of Laura's life. And even worse, her coworkers knew something was up and were like, oh, that guy's such a creep. He's, harassing you. But like nobody really did anything. It was just like, ugh, eye roll. He's such a weirdo.
Yep.
And Richard showed up to company softball games. He talked nonstop about Laura to their coworkers, and people were like, he's just an oddball, And Richard went as far as to befriend the custodial staff at ESL and snag a copy of Laura's keys to her desk. And he was able to go through her desk drawers at his leisure.
Yay! Of course.
Of course, with all her personal files, personal information. He even used his security clearance to access Laura's personnel files at work, where he found out her home address and phone number. And this is just another like PSA. And I don't want to come off like I'm just like bossing everyone around, because like I learn right along with everybody as we go through these stories that, that certain things are red flags. But and I don't want to, I'm not just trying to like act holier than thou when I say this, but there was a scene in the movie, for example, and I don't know if this is real or not, but it's a good example where he went to the HR person and said, oh, we heard it's Laura's birthday coming up. Do you mind? And we want to do like a little party. Do you mind pulling up her file and giving me the exact date so we can prepare? And the HR person's like, oh, that's so nice, and pulls it up, and he's looking over his shoulder and like sees her address and sees, and I don't know how much of that was like fictionalized, but it is very...
It's
like,
a common thing, though, or could be a common thing.
It's just, invasive and scary. And I'd like to think nowadays, you might not be able to walk up to HR and be like, give me their information. But, I feel like some people just have a way with words to sneak around and get access to stuff.
Well, also, everyone thinks that everyone in their circle is harmless. So you just hope that there's no way that they would, like, they're just trying to do something kind. Or if it's something as, subtle as just like a birthday date, it's so unassuming, and that's part of the creepiness of this. And I don't think you're holier than thou with any of that. I think it's just like there's certainly, this is a case that allows us to give a lot of PSAs, because I feel like a lot of times we talk about true crime and it's murderers and it's people
it's
that
just
we
big stuff,
big, but stalking cases are sometimes very gradual and very insidious.
They build.
And it could happen to anyone, and it could also happen by anyone, because again, with toxic masculinity, people are taught to pursue, and if you're not getting the energy you want back, then you just haven't done anything, grand or creative enough yet. And people can get in their heads thinking, oh, I just have, everyone has their own perceptions.
It's the classic rom-com of, just go after the girl until she says yes, and she will eventually. It's sort of like the lesson a lot of us learned, including women. Like, I feel like a lot of us also learned, well, if he's really trying, that means he really likes you.
Exactly. So I think I feel like maybe we feel like, as someone with a platform, as people with a platform, stalking is maybe not more likely than murder, but it feels like it's maybe more common or maybe more misunderstood. And so I don't think I don't know what the right word is, but I don't think you're holier than thou at all.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah.
I think we're just like this. It could very easily happen, and the signs could happen so gradually no one will notice. So especially in workforces where it's male dominated, and I think we also feel responsible to advocate for people. And if you are someone in male-centric spaces and you are someone that men listen to, it is also your duty to stand up for women who could be going through this. So please keep your eyes open and make sure nothing creepy is going on.
Trust no one.
Well, see something, say something, trust your gut. If you're hearing people say, oh, that guy's creepy, but he's harmless, you don't know that.
Yeah, nobody knows exactly until it's too late. Then what? You know what I mean? And I think that's what's so scary about it, is that you're right. It's so insidious that, like, it's easy to brush off especially if it's not happening to you.
Yeah. And if you're being called creepy, by the way, listen to that person. It's not like a flirt. It's like, please back off. They are trying to set a boundary and don't know how to do it safely.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's a great point too. If you're in that position. And like, I mean, I've learned a lot too. I feel like through doing this show, and like one thing that's an example I'm trying to think of that I learned was, when, for example, I'm walking into an apartment complex and someone's like, can you hold the door? And it's like, well, I don't want to be an asshole, but that's what this book, The Gift of Fear, is about too, is like, sometimes if you're like, this doesn't feel right, like just what the worst that happens is you look fucking rude, and what big so what,
And honestly, if you're about to turn them down anyway, they're going to think you're rude anyway, so who cares?
Yeah. Well, I just mean, like, even if you're letting someone into the apartment complex and you don't you don't even know, you're just like, something seems off, I don't recognize this person, or, you know what I mean? And you're like, well, I don't want to be rude. I'll get on the elevator with them, or like, trust your gut. And the worst that happens is you're like, sorry, I'm not comfortable with that. And they're like, what a bitch, or whatever, big whoop.
Exactly.
And you're safe. So yeah, it's like such a hard thing. And so I feel like that's why, and there's so many red flags throughout this that just get ignored, that it's like just so infuriating.
Yeah. Sorry everyone for so many PSAs, but also not really, because we still live in a world where, like, unfortunately, the law is not on our side for things like this a lot of the time. And we really have to look out for each other. So if you feel that you or someone you know is in a creepy position, or if you or someone you know are being told that they are being creepy, then please listen to that. And
yes.
that's it. The end.
And also at the end of the episode, I'll give you some guidelines and stuff.
Oh, good. Okay, good. Thank you.
So anyway, he's being a total creep. He gets her personnel file. He starts calling her landline. He drives by her house. He parks across the street to just watch her at home. And Laura remembers he was ever present. If I looked out my blinds at home, I would see him driving by. If I looked in my rearview mirror, I would see him. And bizarrely, Richard started leaving messages attempting reverse psychology. So he would say something like, I'm going to pick you up for a date at 8 p.m. tonight. If you don't want to go on a date, call me back. Otherwise, I'll assume you do want to go, and I'll see you tonight.
Ew.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so slimy.
It's so catch-22, you know, fucking call me
So
if
it's
you
like-
don't want to go out. Otherwise, I'll be at your fucking house.
So either I get a date with you or I get a phone call from you. Either way,
Exactly.
Either way, I get something from you that you don't want to do.
Exactly. And the only way, this is one thing I do remember from The Gift of Fear, is fucking don't feed into it. Don't respond. Don't call back. And I know that's easier said than done, obviously. But even saying no over and over again and calling them back and yelling at them, like, that's just going to continue their behavior.
Well, also, yeah, you went on a seamless work lunch and he saw it as a first date. So if you call him to say don't talk to me, it still got him to talk to
like,
you.
oh, well, that's all I wanted, the attention, the conversation.
Yep.
So if she called him back, she'd be acknowledged to talk to him, acknowledge the harassment. But then when she didn't call him back, he would always show up ready for their date, waiting outside her house. He would leave notes on her car when it was parked at home. He sat in her driveway for hours. Laura once saw him in her driveway trying different codes on the garage door keypad.
Ew! Please, 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 call
trying
the
to
police.
get inside. And bear in mind, he's a skilled computer technician. So it's like, if anyone can break into your fucking garage, it's this guy.
Oh my God, that's I wouldn't even know what to do.
Like next level terror. I mean,
and that becomes the part where like I would love to give a PSA, but I don't even know what you do in that situation.
No, you don't. That's exactly it. Is like there is just not enough put in place, you know, and there's more than the 80s, but not that much more. So at this point, obviously, Laura is done being fucking polite. She sees him outside. Every time she sees him, she yells at him to chase him away and says, get off my property. The problem was, stalking at the time was not illegal anywhere in the United States. And even now, it's extremely difficult to get police to do anything about a stalker. And here's a little fun fact for you. According to the National Violence Against Women survey, men commit most stalking. 4 out of every 5 stalking victims are women. While high-profile celebrity stalking cases generate considerable media attention, they are relatively rare. Most stalking occurs between people who know each other. Less than 1/4 of women and about 1/3 of men are stalked by strangers. So typically it is somebody you know. Women are most likely to be stalked by a current or former intimate partner during the relationship, after it ends, or at both points in time. And so, you know, it reminds me also of like sexual assault, where it's like you can be raped by somebody you're married to. You can be stalked by someone you're in a relationship with. It does not mean you're asking for it or you're like consenting to it, you know? And so, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, only about 12% of all stalking cases result in criminal prosecution, and about a quarter of female stalking victims and about 1/10 of male stalking victims obtain restraining orders against their stalkers. And of all victims with restraining orders, 69% of the women and 81% of the men said their stalkers violated the order. So at the end of the day, it's just a piece of fucking paper, and a lot of times that'll just piss them off enough to escalate.
Yep.
So
wow.
Basically, even if you can prove you're being stalked and get
You're still
authorities
fucked.
to take action, they get you a restraining order. It's poorly enforced. It's hard to enforce. And you may have just angered them or, you know, convinced them that you're still in contact.
Or they still think it's part of the chase. They think it's,
exactly. It's like another challenge. Exactly. So back in 1984, there wasn't a single anti-stalking law in the United States anyway. So by legal definition, Richard was breaking 0 fucking laws. He could follow Laura everywhere he wanted. He could sit outside her house all night, leave letters at her doorstep, and she had nothing she could do.
And like, best she could do was call the police and be like, this guy's creeping me out. And they'd be like, well, relax.
Well, what they would say, which they do say now too, is like, okay, but if he is technically not breaking a law, like our hands are tied. If he harms you, then we'll do something. And it's like, well, then it's too late. You know, it's just
Yeah,
such a
exactly.
hard, like weird gray area. And it still is that way. So eventually, this is fucking wild. Laura finds out Richard is applying to rent the apartment next door to hers. So she moves because, of course, the onus is on her to avoid this. But it was no use because, of course, Richard immediately found her new home. And this went on for 4 years. And Laura moved 4 different times trying to get away from him.
Shut up.
Imagine.
I truly wouldn't even know what to do or where
No.
to go or who to
No.
talk to about it.
You're just not safe, you know? So he wrote Laura hundreds of letters over this time period, which he handed to her at work, left on her desk, her car, her mailbox, at her front door. In late 1985, this was about a year into the stalking behavior, a little bit after a year, actually. Laura finally went to HR after a lot of people were like, you got to talk to your job. But again, you know, people criticize her for waiting so long, but it's like, until you're in this position,
yeah.
you can't say, oh, well, she should have said something. Well, and what? Like, what of it?
Like,
what
she already tried moving 4 different times.
Yeah.
And also, like, keep in mind, this is a woman in STEM at a time where women were not in this workforce. Like, she probably didn't want to risk her job. She didn't want to risk her
that
title.
guy in the office who shows up and immediately starts causing, an uproar. And, it just pisses me off that when people like victim blame in this scenario, it's like, no, that fucking guy needs to stop, not her. She didn't do anything wrong.
She didn't do anything wrong. Like, yeah, you be in her position and see how you feel. If people are telling you that's your fault or you need to stop. You
should have said something earlier. It's like, well, and what would have happened? Because guess what? She says something a year in and it goes on for 3 more years. So it doesn't even fucking do anything, you know?
Oh God. Okay.
So it just pisses me off. Also, this guy's an older senior coworker. And like you said, it's like she's in a disadvantaged position here, being a woman here, being new to the company.
Power dynamic
For sure, the age, everything. And worse, her coworkers already knew what was happening and they didn't report it either. So it's like, if they're critiquing her, well, maybe you should have said something. And she could
obviously
have
it would have done nothing. So
exactly, she felt like there was no point. And so a year in, she's like, fine, I will talk to HR. So she tells the HR department everything. And I will say, hey, if this is happening to you, go to HR. I'm not saying don't go talk to HR. That's not what I'm saying. I think at the time, especially when this wasn't considered a big deal, she felt like this was a worthless pursuit to go to HR. I would say now, I believe there are improved protocol in place for this kind of thing. I would hope so, at least, and maybe slightly more fair and balanced. So, if you do, I'm not saying don't talk to HR, but I'm also saying I can understand why she didn't at the time.
Especially because, like, best case scenario, they would have like fired him and gotten him away from her, and then he would have been pissed off and really come at her. Like, no matter what, you don't win.
It's like a lose-lose thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
So Laura told the HR department everything, the letters, the gifts, the way he followed her to her aerobics class, sat outside her house. And did they fire him? Absolutely not. They sent Richard to counseling, and he promised to leave Laura alone, and then he literally just continued to stalk her while in this therapy that he was mandated to do. So HR saw that the problem was persisting, and did they fire him? No, of course not. This time, Jean Tuffley of HR approached Richard and told him, like, seriously, you got to knock it off. Stop it. Leave her alone. And he's like, okay. And he waits 2 months and then goes right back at it. After those 2 months of waiting, he writes Laura an especially threatening letter telling her that she and her roommate could expect a visit from him. Fucking yikes. And to make it clear that she couldn't do anything about it and he had complete access to her, he left a package on her car, and inside of it was a key to her new apartment that he had somehow obtained and presumably had multiple copies of. So.
Wow.
Terrifying.
Oh,
so Laura went to HR again, and they issued Richard an official letter of warning that he may be fired if his behavior continued. And of course, this company is utterly failing Laura, even basically helping Richard at this point. And Laura couldn't even go to the police because this is not illegal, so she had nowhere to turn. Once Laura was back in Virginia visiting her parents for the holidays, and they received a letter at the house from him to just prove that he knew where she was and he knew where her family lived, no matter how far away she went.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And
so now even if she tried to like flee
Hide
and
out.
like even not just even hide out in Virginia, if she decided to like go straight up undercover and like move to like Wyoming, her parents are still now in danger.
Right.
Like
Well, great point. Like, even if she's out of the picture, like,
or her roommate who probably doesn't want to fucking leave, you know? Like,
and she had siblings, and she had, yeah, exactly. It's like suddenly your whole life is at risk here. Everyone you love.
yeah, even the final option of at least like changing your name and fleeing the country, it's like, okay, well now I would be
Now they
leaving
know where
other
your
people
mom
at
lives.
risk. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, Richard had already sunk into absolute delusion. He suggested Laura go with him to see a marriage counselor for their problems.
What?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's just beyond.
It's just like, seriously, guy. He told a coworker he planned to buy a house with Laura, and he named Laura as the sole beneficiary in both of his life insurance policies. And so he was just like riding on this wave of we're in love. So in January of 1986, Richard confronted Laura outside of her newest apartment and threatened her. He told her he owned guns. He said he was done asking her to do what he wanted, and he was going to start telling her what to do. He said, I do own guns and I'm good with them.
Forget
And
it.
one of the things another thing I remember from the book that Gavin de Becker says is when someone tells you their intentions, believe them. When someone tells you who they are and what they're capable of, fucking believe them.
Yeah,
And
they've clearly been able to think it through, so they
There's a
could
reason.
absolutely act on it.
They're saying it, and it behooves you to trust them. And I'm not saying she didn't, but I'm just saying in general, like, he's literally laying out a plan right here, you know?
Yeah.
And so after this, he tells Laura, once I'm fired, you won't ever be able to control me ever again. Pretty soon, I'll crack under the pressure and run amok and destroy everything in my path. So basically now he's threatening her that, like, she's the reason he's going to harm other people.
Yeah.
So a month later, in February of 1986, Richard confronted Jean, the woman from HR, and told her she had no right to interfere in his personal relationships. And Jean basically said, what you're doing is illegal, and if you don't stop, you'll be fired. And Richard said if they fired him, he would have nothing left to live for. He said he had guns. He wasn't afraid to use them. And Jean later testified that she asked him during this meeting, Rich, are you saying you would kill me? And Richard said, yes, but I would take others with me.
So he could easily just come into the office and just like hurt everybody.
Yep. He's like, I'll kill you. He just outright said it. So Jean went to her supervisor about this threat to her fucking life. And they simply told her that she no longer had to communicate with Richard and that a male HR employee would handle it from now on. And Richard still wasn't fucking fired. He just told the woman in HR he would kill her if they fired him. And he's not fired. So nobody reported this to the police. Finally, a male coworker brought up Laura to Richard, said, if you don't cut it out, you're going to get fired. And of course, Richard did not cut it out. So it wasn't until May 1986, after 2 years of this nightmare, that ESL finally fired Richard. And it wasn't even just over the stalking. It was actually over his declining work performance.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
I know. It's just horrifying. And honestly, like, I was going to say this later, but I'll say it now. This is also extra bad because they ended up writing him a glowing review and he got to work at a competing company. So it's like, it didn't even harm him, you know?
Well,
of course.
Here, say it with me, Kel Surprise.
Kel Surprise.
Jesus, fuck.
So it was far too late for this man to be fired. It didn't make any fucking difference for Laura. In fact, Richard had gotten away with his habits and now had all the time in the world to pursue her. He started parking his car in the ESL parking lot all day, waiting to see Laura come and go from work. Security didn't make him leave. Eventually, he got a new job as a software development engineer, like I said, at a competing firm, and ESL had written him this glowing recommendation. In the meantime, Richard actually began seeing a woman named May Chang. And she, as far as she knew Richard used to have a thing for Laura, but Laura never reciprocated. And she had no idea how absolutely deep this obsession and sickness went.
Girl, run. Yeah.
I know. And in 1987, which was the year after he was fired, Richard was still dating his girlfriend, still working at this new job, and still full-time stalking Laura.
Wow.
He, around this time, wrote Laura a letter that said, it might not really occur to you how far I'm willing to go to upset you. I have nothing else to lose now but my life, so don't try pushing me any further. God
damn it. That's so scary.
It's
That's
terrifying.
so ominous.
Like pure terror.
And you're trapped. There's nothing you can do.
Nothing you can do. And at this point, he's just laying it all out on the line. He would meet with his former ESL coworkers, and he said things that, once again, should have been reported to someone, but everybody just let it go. For example, when one ESL employee criticized the company, they said, "What's it going to take to wake them up? Some madman to come in there to shoot the computers and shoot the place up?" And Richard, at that point, muttered that he might be the one to do it. And they were like, okay. And he then asked if the glass on the front doors was bulletproof, and everyone laughed. They, I guess, thought this joke was about destroying company property, and they were like, whatever, we'll let it slide.
So silly considering like so long ago now he's also said he will hurt everyone in his path.
Kill people, yeah.
Like he was giving us signs a while ago, folks. Why are we still laughing?
It's not even a sign. It's like he's literally saying what he's going to do. Like he just is able to say it to everyone's face. So another time, Richard brought up a former mass shooting in a California McDonald's that happened in '84, and he said, "I wonder what ESL would do or what they would think if I did something like that." Again, nobody reported anything, not even to ESL, who might want to know that this guy had it out for them.
And part of me wants to go like, what the fuck is wrong with these other people for not reporting it? But then I also don't want to like shame them, but also I do think they should have been aware. Also, I think like back then, I mean, especially with, all of the shootings these
increase
days.
In shootings, I think we're all slightly more aware, I would hope.
Yeah, I think maybe there just wasn't like the psychological education or the awareness that everyone just kind of had by simply living in the world. So I 2022 me wants to scream at them like, how are you not seeing these fucking signs? And if you are, why on earth aren't you saying something? Mm-hmm. I have to keep reminding myself, like, gross, but it was a different time and maybe they didn't.
But yeah, and it's hard. It's like, even if you're friends with someone, they say something off the wall and then they're like, I'm just kidding. It's like, I can understand why someone would be like, oh God, that guy's so weird, but not know what to do. It's like, I do get it. And this is why I feel like we all need to take a lesson and be like, see something, say something.
Yep.
So again. This whole time he keeps driving to the ESL parking lot, sitting there, just waiting for her, harassing her when she leaves work. One of Laura's coworkers, Robert, confronted Richard, said he was going to wind up in jail if he kept this up. And at this point, Richard wrote a letter to Laura telling her that Robert better back off. This is the guy who confronted him, or there would be consequences. And he said, I better never see any police around me. In February of 1988, Laura's life was falling apart. She, outside of work, was just facing Richard day in, day out. At work, her security clearance was threatened because Richard's interference in her life was making it hard for her to get security clearance, and her job was at stake, which is like the one thing she was trying to salvage this whole time. Mm-hmm. And this had gone on now for 4 fucking years that she's living this pure nightmare. And she had long considered trying to file a restraining order, but was terrified about the consequences, which again is like another big thing, because I feel like the automatic, the knee-jerk response is get a restraining order. And it's like, that's not, it's a piece of paper, it doesn't necessarily do anything. And so she was so terrified that like a restraining order would trigger him to retaliate against her. And he had actually told coworkers he would not, quote, react well if Laura ever filed a restraining order against him. But her job's at stake. She needs a security clearance. She has no other choice. She files for a temporary restraining order, and the judge scheduled a court date for Wednesday, February 17th, where Laura would have to submit evidence to request a long-term or permanent restraining order. Oh my gosh. Some people were like, wow, that you let this get way out of hand, which is like, fuck off. Okay.
Truly.
But at the same time, most of her coworkers did back her up and confirm like she never encouraged him. This is not her fault, and she never strung him along. She always turned him down. So this temporary restraining order was served to Richard on February 8th of 1988. And it said, Richard couldn't come within 300 yards of Laura, call her, or contact her in any way. So Richard sent Laura's lawyers, in response to this, a package full of letters defending himself. He included receipts for alleged dates they'd been on. He said he and Laura were in a long-term romantic relationship and she was lying about the stalking. Thankfully, none of them believed him, obviously.
Right.
2 days after the police searched Richard the order, he went to a sporting goods store and asked the manager for something with power.
Forget it.
So he bought a shotgun and a ton of ammunition, and he paid with a faulty check because at this point he was broke. He owed the IRS tens of thousands of dollars. He basically felt like he had nothing to lose. Like he was breaking at this point. That same day, he went to a shooting range and requested 6, quote, man-shaped targets to practice on. They're like, okay.
Again, why wouldn't a shooting range be like, no? Why?
Well, because they are that shape, you know?
Oh, yeah. I see what you're talking. I thought that, I don't know what my brain was thinking, but.
No, but it sounds alarming when you think about it, but I guess that's kind of, especially
I guess
if
that's part of the,
in like self-defense training, that's how you know,
yeah.
learn to
no,
shoot a
that
gun.
does make sense.
But it is very
geez.
ominous in this scenario, you know?
Yeah, what a way to phrase that.
Yeah. Man-shaped targets. So Richard also bought a mobile home, and on February 16th, which was one day before the court date, the court hearing about making this a permanent restraining order, he drove his mobile home to the ESL parking lot and waited for Laura to come outside.
With his shotgun in tow, I'm sure.
Oh, and all his ammo. Yep. And his defense attorneys later claimed he had no plans to kill Laura or anyone else, and apparently, he claimed that he actually wanted to go outside, talk to Laura, and if she rejected him again, he was going to, quote, kill himself in front of her to show her, like, what she had done. So that was what he claimed. Unfortunately, that's not what he did. Instead, at about 3 p.m., Richard got out of his mobile home and began his fucking rampage. On his way into the building, he encountered a former coworker that he'd been on friendly terms with and just shot him right there in the parking lot. His name was Larry Kane, and he was the first victim of Richard's killing spree. So Richard walked through the building, making his way to Laura's second-story office and shooting at anyone in his path. Some employees escaped emergency exits and windows. Others barricaded their office doors with bookshelves. People hid under desks, in closets, and even in the ceiling. One coworker said to another that even without seeing the shooter, they knew it must be Richard coming after Laura. That's how obvious this was. Like, they just heard gunshots. There was even another building nearby, and one witness said, oh, the older employees seemed to know who it was and why they were shooting. Like, a different building. They just knew who it was. That's how obvious it was that this guy was going to snap. So when Richard finally got to Laura's office, she tried to slam the door, but he shot through the door and shot her in the shoulder, badly wounding her, and then walked away. He discovered one woman hiding under a desk, and he saw it was a woman he was on friendly terms with, his former landlady, in fact. And he said, oh, there's someone in here. You can come out. Oh, it's Linda. And he said, you can get up and leave. And she thought it was a trick. And he was like, no, get up and leave. You're okay. And she got up and left unscathed. And
what?
I know. Another woman hiding nearby got up and said, can I go too? He said yes, and let them both leave unharmed.
Jesus. Also, that was like, I can't imagine a more mentally torturous,
traumatizing experience.
I mean, the whole thing. But to even like to wonder, like, if in this moment that's it, because it's a
to
trick.
Get to the door, like in that moment, like, is he tricking me? Then Richard contacted ESL security, and they connected his call to the police. And for hours, hostage negotiators tried to get Richard to stand down. He eventually let authorities enter the first floor and retrieve the people who were wounded. Laura, meanwhile, realized that her office had 2 exits, and the next door office Richard was in only had 1. So she actually made a break for it with her, shoulder bleeding out, basically.
Yeah.
And she ran into a few other coworkers who were hiding, and all of them escaped the building together. By now, the parking lot was filled with ambulances and media. And there's actual footage on the news of Laura making it outside the building and getting pulled into an ambulance. And she was taken to the hospital. She underwent multiple surgeries to treat her broken arm, collapsed lung. She had spinal damage and severe blood loss. She ended up being in the hospital recovering for 19 days.
Jesus. Oh my God.
But thankfully survived. So Richard stayed in the building until 8:30 p.m., at which time he told negotiators that he was hungry. And he would come out if they brought him a specific sandwich and a Diet Pepsi from his favorite restaurant. And they were like, okay. So they fucking got him a sandwich, and he walked right out with his hands up. And police took him into...
It's so weird. It's like, I keep thinking everything's a trick with him, but he's really like did he get what he wanted? Like, I don't understand. Like,
well, he got his sandwich because they delivered it to him in jail. So you know what? At least they kept up with that fucking promise.
Okay.
I hope they spit in it, but whatever.
I know. Yeah.
Ultimately, fucking tragically, Richard killed 7 people and injured 4, including Laura. So his victims were Lawrence Kane, 46, Wayne Buddy Williams Jr., 23, Ronald G. Doney, 36, Joseph Lawrence Silva, 43, Glenda Moritz, 27, Ronald Stephen Reed, 26, Helen Lamparter, 49. And the following weeks, and they were just in the wrong place, the wrong time, you know?
Yeah.
The following weeks, of course, were a media frenzy with Laura at the center of the attention. This nightmare for her is just continuing. And in an interview, a news anchor asked one of the victims' family members if they felt bad for Laura Black, and one of them said, no. As a woman, I cannot imagine tolerating unwanted attention for 4 years. So basically saying, well, she let it go on for this long. Like, what did she expect?
Wow, that is beyond. And of course, you said it was a woman who said that.
Yes, it was.
So against your own fucking kind. Great.
But to be fair, they did have somebody killed in the shooting. So, it's a family member of one of the victims. So I imagine it was a very hard position to be in, to be like, asked, do you feel sorry for her? I imagine, I would hope that maybe in the years following, they kind of grew to understand, but I don't know. I don't know. But
yeah,
I would hope it was just a heated moment.
Yes. Okay. Understood.
But I'm not sure. So it just goes to show you that people will still blame the victim in that case. Anyway.
Also, like, what a tricky space for like the survivor's guilt of the people who made it out of that building that day. Of like, oh, there were so many signs.
Should have, could have, would have. Yeah.
Yeah. God.
Terrible. So an ESL employee spoke out against Richard, saying he's a hideous human being who was on a power trip. It had nothing to do with unrequited love. It was all about power, all about control. That's the thing. It's not about love. In these abusive situations, it's never about love. It's about, if you love someone, you wouldn't treat them this way. You wouldn't harm them. It's not fucking love. So like, throw that out the fucking window. So he said it had nothing to do with unrequited love. It was all about power, all about control. And he set himself above everyone else in society, and he should pay the ultimate price. So Laura said if stalking had been a crime, she would have taken action right away, but she had no power, no recourse. She did have a restraining order against him during the shooting after all, and look how much good that did, you know? She even expected Richard to attack her for the restraining order, but she said she never imagined he would, take it to such an extreme. Laura says the blame is not on her, and ESL should have terminated Richard far earlier, amen, and action should have been taken to protect her and her coworkers against him after his firing, especially when he was just outright threatening HR. He was saying, I'm going to shoot the place up. And the day after the shooting, while Richard was in custody, the court finally granted Laura the permanent restraining order against Richard, and through tears, San Jose Family Court Commissioner Lois Kittle said, pieces of paper do not stop bullets. And
exactly. Thank you for the permanent piece of paper.
Yeah,
I guess.
Exactly. So Richard's mother was shocked by what Richard did. She said she wanted to send sympathy cards to the victims' families, but didn't know if it was her place to do so. She never knew about Laura Black. Richard never spoke to her about Laura.
Weird.
And I know, because he spoke to like everyone else about her. After what Richard did, even his few family members who still spoke to him cut him off completely. Richard's girlfriend, May, was equally shocked by Richard's rampage and his obsession with Laura. It seemed that although everyone knew about the behavior and did almost nothing to stop it, he would like hide it from the women in his life. Like he almost, like he was able to maintain a relationship with a woman and keep his mother out of the loop, even though...
Yeah, maybe because he knew that they would sense something was up, you know?
Yeah, maybe he knew they were not safe people to hold this information. So Richard wrote Laura a final letter from jail, the last word of his 200 plus letters he'd written. He said, when I go to the gas chamber, I'll smile at the cameras and you'll know you have won in the end. So see, again, it's about winning. It's about a power dynamic. It's about a game or like competition it's not about love. That's not how that works. So on March 11th of 1989, he wrote to a friend about Laura saying, I'm glad she's okay. I hope she understands if I'd really want to hurt her, she wouldn't be here today. So he insists he let her live because he wanted her to know what she had done and to see the wreckage she had caused, basically. So
I feel like that's pretty common, though, of like, I want you to be here to watch,
to witness,
to see all the suffering you've caused.
AKA what I'm causing, but blaming on you. Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, of course. But I think that's their mentality of like, if I killed you, you wouldn't be here to suffer like I have.
And also, like, he wouldn't be able to continue his delusional nonsense if she were gone, you know? Now he still has this, he thinks he still has this hold over her, or I'm sure he still feels like there's this power dynamic since she's still around. Oof. So Richard insists he didn't plan to kill anyone. He planned to kill himself, nobody else, but he did. So I don't know what the
then you got hungry for a sandwich, and then you forgot to do that part?
It? Yeah. Okay. Richard's lawyers insisted that before Laura, Richard was never violent. He was unlikely to ever kill again. They insisted his actions were not premeditated, but the prosecution used every letter, every gift, every phone call from Richard against him as evidence. They proved that he was calculated, premeditated, a stalker, a killer, and Laura herself took the stand to testify about the depth of Richard's depravity and behavior toward her for 4 years, which must have been a very tough thing to do. In 1990, California passed the first anti-stalking law in the United States in response to this case. And Laura's nightmare called national attention to stalking and the lack of legislation about it, and this became an infamous case featured in several film adaptations, including the Brooke Shields one, and studies of criminal behavior, and is notably featured in the book The Gift of Fear, one of my faves. In October of 1991, about 7 years after Richard first laid eyes on Laura, he was convicted of 7 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of second-degree burglary, and 1 vandalism charge for shooting office equipment. He was sentenced to death and denied a later appeal, and as of 2022, he is still on death row. And that is the story of the stalking.
Is Laura still here?
You know what? Laura still works. At last I've heard, I think she's pretty darn well scrubbed off the internet.
Sure.
For good reason.
Yeah, you would never want to ever have your information out there again.
Exactly. But last I heard, she still works at ESL, or at the same company. I don't know if it's still called ESL, but...
I'm amazed that she would want to keep working for that company.
I know. But you know what? It was her dream job. She said...
Wow.
This is for me. And allegedly, last I heard, she was still working there.
I would have been like, I need a glowing review. I need such a recommendation, and I will be leaving.
You owe me. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to go work for, I don't know, Apple or something and just become the president there.
I'm going to invent Apple. Bye. Yeah.
Right. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So I just want to let you know, let everybody know, if this is something that you are dealing with, there are plenty of resources that you can, especially now with the internet, obviously. The statistics are still very scary, but there is stuff you can do. If you go to victimsofcrime.org, there is a Stalking Resource Center, and we can put that in our show notes. And there's some response tips on there. There's, a guide for how to respond. There are different explanations of, for example, like stalking through technology, which obviously is now like a new angle on it since the 80s, being able to stalk through the internet. And then specifically for women, womenslaw.org will put this also in the show notes. There are safety tips for stalking victims, or if you know somebody who is being harassed or stalked, there are safety strategies and legal options that you could pursue. This is like specifically a legal resource. And, one of them, for example, says to create a log to, date and time every incident, who was present, ask witnesses to write down what they saw. And you know what? It fucking blows because, yes, the onus is on you as a victim, unfortunately, a lot of times to make, take these steps. But for example, if you are a witness, you see something like this happen, step in, do something, say something, right, contribute however you can. Don't turn a blind eye. And so, save evidence. If somebody's stalking, online harassing you, take screenshots, keep voicemails, text, don't delete them. Keep evidence of all of that. Because it might be important later when it comes to, your gathering
safety.
Evidence. So,
yep,
that's that.
Wow. Oh.
I wish there was more that could be done, but unfortunately, it's a very limited amount that you can do. Slightly more thankfully than a couple decades ago, but still.
I mean, at least if there was something to come out of it, at least there was, legislation, being kind of written up and taken seriously.
Yeah, at least it caused some action to be taken. And I will say, I'm going to say it again, but you better fucking do it, is read The Gift of Fear, because this is his entire job, is literally helping people get out of these kinds of situations, preparing workforces for being able to tell workforces who is going to take action on a shooting threat. For example, if somebody is a bomb threat or a shooting threat, like, he is able to tell, after so many decades of experience, who to be taken seriously and who should be just kind of brushed away, you know? And so it's a great resource. So read it. And there's more resources in there if you're struggling with that. So anyway, this was a big episode. I apologize, but
big episode. There's, I mean, a lot of PSAs, but again, it's one of those things where it feels like it could happen to anyone and overnight, you know? So,
and I will say, it's not only exclusively women, also happens to men. Of course.
Yes.
The binary doesn't apply here either. It, you know, it can happen to anyone by anyone. So just, you know, be aware. And if you're wondering if this is something that's happening to you, you know, check out some resources online. And yeah, be safe out there, folks.
Oof. Well, I don't know. I don't know what to
The
say.
end.
Sometimes I really love when you do old time stories, because it doesn't feel as if not only do your older stories feel further removed in some way, but also it you know, I don't know. I just like stalking really is such a thing where, like, I feel like we all know someone who's had some level of a stalker, or
it's so relatable in the worst way. It's so scary.
Yeah, it feels really personal. This one feels really personal.
We
for
can
some
all
reason.
kind of understand the fear and the terror and like how useless you can feel in that position.
Everyone knows the feeling of helplessness.
It's like vulnerability. Yes, exactly. And the helplessness.
And this whole story, just from beginning to end, just really, you can absolutely feel at least a splinter of a fraction of what she had to go through.
Exactly. And like, we can all relate in a way, which is very scary.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. And I hope we did someone some good out there, whether we prompted you to be an advocate for somebody, or maybe, you know, you're going through a situation right now, and hopefully some of those resources help you. And if you happen to listen to our show and you are someone who maybe is, you know, really having a crush on someone and you want to pursue them, and it doesn't have to be, you know, as intense as fully stalking someone, but even if you're thinking like, oh, I'm going to ask them for the 5th time to the dance, maybe all 4 no's are enough. And maybe let's just end it there before anything
That's a great
gets bigger.
Great point. Because I mean, I've had to learn that. I feel like in high school, you know, you get a crush on someone, you're like, unrequited love. It's so romantic. And then over the years,
I feel like that's how so many stalking things start, where it's so gradual, and maybe they don't even think that it's going to lead to something dangerous, but it just gets really blown out of proportion very quickly.
Delusional element sometimes of, yeah, exactly.
If someone says no, or if they don't even say an enthusiastic yes, just read the room and move on. Let's just leave it there.
Read the fucking room.
Read the room, folks. It's not, there's no game, there's no chase. No means no means no means no. And with that, folks, I guess we'll see you next week for some more fun. Oh my gosh. And
that's
why
we
drink.